So you guys really liked my video where I planned teams last month, and today I thought I would show you some of my favorite, most memorable teams and some failed teams from past playthroughs. I've been playing since Gen 1. I started with Red all the way back in 99 probably, and my team building has definitely evolved through the years. When I was a kid, I didn't do things the way I do them now as a 30-year-old, and I have been making content since Gen 3, so I have a lot of saved drawings of past teams and videos of past teams and other pictures and things that I can pull from to kind of show you my playthrough. Plus, I still have some of the original save files. We're just going to go through in chronological order today. Well, no. We're going to go through in order by gen today, which is not chronological order, because we're going to be starting with a team from 2016, and then my oldest teams that I'm going to talk about are going to be from Gen 4, which is going to be like 2009, 2010. And I'll explain why I don't have records of anything older than that. The reason I am making another unscripted video, this is not what this channel is going to be from now on, but you guys really liked the last video, and I thought that this might be some nice exclusive type content to put on my Patreon. I haven't really talked about my Patreon that much on this channel, even though I have had it for a very long time now, but I haven't had any exclusive content rewards on there, and I'm going to start doing that, and it's going to be in this style. So this video is really kind of another way for me to practice doing this so that I can maybe do it faster so that it doesn't interfere at all with the other main channel content that I'm making, so I can get them up monthly for you guys over there. So if you're interested in more content like this, definitely check out my Patreon, and whatever you pledge there to see these extra videos will help support the main content. I have 3 essays that I've already written that I'm still working on, and this is going to give me a little bit more time as well to finish up one of them, which I just cannot get done in a month. So thank you so much. Now on to the teams. So starting with Gen 1, when I was probably 6 years old, my team building strategy at that age was really what most 6-year-olds do, which is over-rely on your starter, maybe catch Zapdos, because it's the one legendary that you're likely to find on accident. Maybe just use those 2 Pokemon. So I remember that my original starter was Charmander, and that I named it Sasha, but otherwise I didn't have the habit of nicknaming all of my Pokemon, which is why it's hard for me to remember a lot of Pokemon teams that I've had prior to Gen 3. And the other reason for that is I used to constantly restart my games and play them over and over and over again. I was not big on actually beating games as a kid, which is really funny because I'm obsessed with 100%ing games now as an adult, but as a kid, I pretty much just played until I got stuck and then started over from the beginning. Frequently, I would just rename my Charmander Sasha for every playthrough, and maybe I wanted to play the easier early game parts that particular day, so I would just start a new save file. As I got older, and I had more Pokemon games and Game Boys to trade my own Pokemon back and forth, I would trade all of my Pokemon to Gen 2, and then start a new game in Gen 1. So I would save Pokemon, but then none of them were nicknamed, so I couldn't ever remember which ones are from which playthroughs, except for Sasha, because one of my Sashas, at some point, was the first Pokemon I ever raised to level 100, and that was in Gen 2. I did find this drawing that I think I made in high school of a team that I had recently, at that time, used in a replay. So it looks like it's Machoke, Rapidash, Golduck, Rhydon, Arbok, and Exeggutor. So my history with Gen 1 really spans a long time. I've replayed those games in particular so many times that I actually have trouble coming up with new combinations of Gen 1 Pokemon to use in the games that are remakes of Kanto, and even if I have to go back and replay Kanto for footage, which I always do for some reason. So when I started my 100% playthrough of Gen 1, there is not a lot in Gen 1 that I hadn't done yet, except I hadn't planned teams to do the Stadium Cups. Except I don't remember when this team was planned. I think I was an adult, and I think I found this team on Smogon. But I could not beat Pika Cup in Stadium round 1. And I know that I made this team on my save file from high school where I completed the Pokédex because of what the original trainer name is for these Pokemon. So this is the first team that I have record of and nicknames for and is really memorable to me. So I don't remember when this team is from, but I know that it was for Pika Cup round 1 specifically because I could beat maybe all of the other cups in round 1 with rentals, but not Pika Cup. So here is the synopsis of Pika Cup from Bulbapedia. It is a cup for low-level Pokemon between level 15 to level 20. The sum of the levels of the 3 Pokemon chosen cannot be more than 50. Technically, all Pokemon except for Mewtwo and Mew are eligible to enter, although only Mew is listed as prohibited in the in-game rules list. However, obtaining Pokemon at such low levels, especially evolved Pokemon, can get quite complicated. While some are catchable at low levels in certain versions, example, level 15 Dragonair in Pokemon Yellow, others are more complex and involve trading with in-game trainers and then trading those Pokemon to different in-game trainers in different games. What? That's crazy. So there's eligible, but Pokemon that are eligible but unavailable without glitches or cheats, and they can't be rented. So you can't use Venusaur, Charizard, Blastoise, Pidgeot, Graveler, Omastar, Kabutops, Articuno, Zapdos, or Moltres. I wonder if they elaborate on some of the rental Pokemon are at an illegal level. That's interesting. Some of the rental Pokemon also feature illegal movesets. Cool. Some of the trainers use underleveled Pokemon. However, some of these Pokemon become eligible with trade back. So I guess they're talking about level 15 Muck, which you can maybe obtain in Gen 2 and then trade back to Gen 1 through an in-game trade. So I see what they're saying. So when you do an in-game trade, the Pokemon that you get in return from the trainer is always the same level as the Pokemon that you trade them, which is how you get some severely low-level Pokemon, or Pokemon at levels that they're normally not available at. And I guess because you can trade back and forth between Gen 1 and 2, there are now additional Pokemon in Gen 2 that you can receive from in-game trades. So you can do the in-game trades in Gen 2 to get the Pokemon at the lower level and then trade them back to Gen 1 to use for this cup, I think is what they're saying. But I didn't know any of that. So the best team that I think that I found on Smogon for Pika Cup was this team. So this is Almond the Alakazam, Peanut the Arcanine, Hazel the Clefable, Coconut the Cloyster, Pecan the Onyx, and Cashew the Raichu, which are very cute names. I think I came up with this name scheme because when I was a kid, I read a manga. There was a bizarre shoujo Pokemon manga called Magical Pokemon Journeys, and there was a kid in there named Peanut. And I always loved that name for a character, especially for Pokemon, so I always wanted to name a Pokemon Peanut, and I think that inspired Arcanine's name and then the entire name scheme for the team. Alakazam is so obnoxiously more powerful than everything in Gen 1 that for the most part you don't need to use a lot of these other Pokemon. Really, Clefable, I think, doesn't get a lot of use, especially since, as a physical attacker, Onix is on the team, but Onix is not that fast, and in Gen 1, speed is everything. I actually tried to go back to Stadium 1 in preparation for this video to see, reuse each of these teams that I have registered and see how they did. Most of the Pokemon that I have to talk to you about are teams that I used for Stadium, and that's why they're memorable to me. But Stadium is just a really, really hard game. It's much harder than Stadium 2. There's something about the battle system in Gen 1 where everything is just so lethal. And there's just no way to defend yourself or recover health, really, on most Pokemon because there's no held items. So yeah, this is just really difficult. I did beat Pika Cup again with this team, which is registered on Stadium, but the only Pokemon that I really never found a use for at all was this Cloyster. And that's mostly because I know that it's there to deal with Dragonair, which has Dragon Rage, which in Pika Cup is devastating. So it has Ice Beam to deal with that, but I never ended up coming up against that. So that's this team, and it's important to remember this Alakazam because he's going to come back. He's going to be on a lot of future teams. So moving on ahead to 2016. This, I have a memory of what year it was when I made these teams because I recorded this entire playthrough because I streamed the entire playthrough on my Twitch. And I saved the VODs of the entire playthrough, except for Stadium for some reason. It's just gone. There's just no record of it. I think I didn't save my VODs back then. And there are some clips that people made of it, so I have like the teeniest, tiniest moments, but I don't know why people chose to clip what they did, or, you know, it's not like those were highlights necessarily of the run, so it's really unfortunate that past me just didn't save any of that, but I have the memory, and I remember these teams that I made, and thankfully I have the playthrough where I caught them all. In this particular playthrough, we are going to go in with the goal of building teams for every single one of the Pokemon Stadium Cups, but the fun thing about Gen 1 is that Pokemon Stadium is basically like an enormous post-game for the Pokemon that you raise in-game. So what we're going to do is we're going to raise some Pokemon with the goal of using them for this generation's post-game. So this is not going to be a glitch list run. We are going to be using some glitches. In order to build teams for Stadium, it's pretty much mandatory that you can duplicate TMs because the learn set for Pokemon in this generation is tiny. Like, most Pokemon don't learn anything on their own by leveling up, and TMs are not reusable. So we're definitely going to be using some glitches, and we're also going to be using the Mew glitch to get a specific Pokemon that I want that you normally can't get without a nickname, and I want to give it a special nickname. Our starter is not Charmander. Our starter is not Squirtle. We're going with Bulbasaur today. And the reason we're going with Bulbasaur is because we're actually going to be using it in Pokemon Stadium. And rather than using Exeggutor for my sleep spreader, I decided to go with Bulbasaur. I know that you can technically catch Pikachu in every patch of grass that you can have an encounter in Viridian Forest, but I always feel like I have my best luck trying to find a Pikachu in this final little patch here by the exit. Pikachu! Alright, we're not even going to weaken it because I don't want to wait around for another, so we're going to throw balls at it. Yay! First try. So we're going to look for a Pokemon to catch, and then we'll probably call it there. Ah!
Is that what we're looking for?
That's what we're looking for. Finally.
You can thank everyone who pressed up and B on their keyboard for that.
No, we're actually not going to go for Alakazam. This Abra is going to serve two purposes. It's going to be on our Petite Cup team, and it's going to help us perform a glitch. Got it, finally. Alright, we found our next Pokemon. Oh, you know what? Did we fight Misty? I think I skipped Misty. My bad. I just get so carried away because I was so excited about catching myself a Meowth. Okay, here's our friend. We're gonna stand right here. We're gonna save. So now we're gonna use Phoenix and teleport back to Vermilion City. Step 1 complete. Now we need to very carefully make our way back over to the trainer. Okay. Well done. Just to save us time, we're gonna go ahead and teleport back to Vermilion again. When we return up north, we should run into the Pokemon I want to catch. Here we go. Yes! There's our friend. Ah, we got it, we got it. Oh no, Detroit's level 25. We're gonna have to say goodbye to it soon, for a little bit anyway. Alright, so now we need to deposit our Geodude, at least for now, because it's going to be on our Petite Cup team, and with the level limit for the teams in that format, we cannot have our Geodude over level 25. Oh, it's time to say goodbye to our beloved Malibu. Alright Malibu, it's time to retire for a little while, but we will see you again very soon. And just like that, we've run into the very first Pokemon of which we want to catch. Oh, we got it! We got our Ghastly. So this Ghastly is not going to be able to stay in our party very long, unfortunately. We're going for it. Alright, Phoenix, do your thing. Yes, we did evolve our Meowth last time. Chicago is now a full-blown Persian and so much more useful because It was a bit of a struggle, but while it was still a Meowth. Now it's going to be even more useful because we're going to be able to use TMs in just a minute. You guys can't see it on the stream, but since I'm playing this on the Game Boy Tower, every time Missing No shows up, it tells me that it's saving at the bottom. And Missing No does force a save, but it's interesting to like see it happening. So now we've got our Thunderbolt duplicated. I go deposit that in the PC. Oh no, we have to put Phoenix in the box now. A long journey with Phoenix. Lots of glitches were performed, but now it is time to retire our friend, and I just sent out Agora against a Pidgeotto. Oh, now Charlotte has to go in the PC. Ah, we're losing team members. But it's okay, we're gonna catch a new one. Alright, now we're gonna try and catch a Pokemon. So we'll just we'll go for it and see what we find. Oh, I found it. First try. Look at how derpy this thing looks in this game. It's adorable. Ah, we got it, finally. This is the Pokemon that we need. We're gonna throw a rock. Sorry, Rhyhorn. Alright, Dallas grew to level 25. That means it's time to get Dallas out of our party. That was not a very long stint. I'm sure by now you have figured out what we're going to try and catch here. I'm quite nervous because this thing is a good 20 levels higher than all of my party, so we could die here. I don't think I have any sleep. I've paralyzed it though, so hopefully that'll work. So I think it doesn't make a difference trying to get it lower than half health, so we'll just start throwing balls at it. We missed the Pokemon. It's a good sign right there. Okay, it went in the ball. Oh! Well, the first ball we actually hit it with, we got it. We didn't even need to reset. So this is going to be the last Pokemon that I have a nickname picked out for, and it is Seattle. We're getting ready for Pokecup. I am so excited for Pokecup. Been waiting weeks for this. 30. First Missing No. So that should be our rare candies all done. We're so close, you guys. I am so excited to see our friends in Stadium for the first time. We've worked so hard together. We've overcome so much. So, let's get everybody to the levels they need to be at. First of all is Agora. Agora needs to be just level 50, not a level higher. Okay, let's revive Boston. And we're gonna save before we do this so I don't accidentally level people wrong, because that would suck, because then we can't use them in Stadium. This game is very unforgiving in that regard. Was I not supposed to evolve it? Does it learn? I evolved it too early! Ah! Well, that sucks. I guess we just don't have sleep powder. I can't believe I didn't look that up. I was so careful with planning this and I didn't look up. I guess I just assumed that it was gonna be level 55. Catch a new one? But we raised Agora from starterhood. We're gonna replace it because I screwed up? It's not its fault. Well, we'll just have to roll with it. There's no going back now. Okay, our team for Stadium is done from our game. Here they are, all are in glorious Stadium. Well, I knew that they would probably lead with Gyarados. So we're switching, because I like Agora and I would like it to survive.
Oh, and a rough Pokemon chain. That's right. Here's the first move. Yeah.
Good switch. Good strategic switch. Thunderbolt. Oh, it's switching. Of course. Oh, this is gonna be a lot of switching, this battle.
What'll it do?
Aim for the horn!
Here's a Pokemon chain.
Reedy.
What's this? A decent hit.
Stop switching! Stop! Let me kill you. Please.
What's that?
At least we got a crit. But we're switching. Because it has flamethrower. So into Seattle. Ground doesn't work on Venusaur in this Gen 1? I don't know about that.
What now? Goodness!
I'm very worried. Very worried.
Will this Pokemon swap
Don't
change
switch.
the flow of
Don't
battle?
switch. Don't switch. Stop!
Oh, there's going to be a change of
Stop switching! We're gonna need to start switching into Chicago, because if we keep this up, then Seattle is gonna take too many hits. Okay, we're gonna switch back into Agora. They're gonna switch back into Gyarados. And when they switch back into Gyarados, we'll switch back into Agora, because we'll know they're gonna be switching. Okay, so now we're gonna hit it once. We're gonna switch out to Seattle. It's gonna switch Gyarados out.
Will this Pokemon
And then we'll
swap
switch
change
back into
the flow
Agora,
of
because it's
battle?
gonna switch right on out. What? Whoa! Hyper Beam. Hang in there! You can do it! Oh! Oh my god.
How will the
It's gonna switch out, right? So we're gonna switch into Agora right now. It's gonna switch out.
another
It's gonna
Pokemon
switch out.
change?
It's not gonna out-predict me because it's a computer. Oh, it's recharging.
Can't make a move. How will this swap affect the outcome?
I'm so mad and embarrassed. And it's gonna kill me now.
The trainer
What do we do now? We switch out again. We're gonna switch into Chicago, because if we switch into Seattle, then it'll die. I'm stupid.
Oh, inversion.
Survive whatever it does. Survive whatever it does. It's true, I am battling on an empty stomach. Good Chicago. But now Chicago is not going to switch. Chicago is going to use Slash and kill this thing. Also, it has Thunderbolt. What am I doing?
Like fighting
It's switching.
Oh, there's
Chicago has Bubble Beam. We should have just led with Chicago. Oh my god.
what now? Hit the weak.
So are we going to be faster?
How will the swap Pokemon
I'm just going to use
fight?
Bubble Beam. Okay.
Bubble Beam.
Good job, Chicago. Making up for my mistakes.
Is it down Pokemon chain?
And if we're faster, we can kill this thing right now.
Different type.
We're faster! Mimo! Good job being faster! She's like, what? Why are you talking to me?
Wow. Going down. Left in third.
Go, Chicago, go! Go, Chicago, go!
There's the attack. That's the weak spot.
It's digging.
Burrowed underground.
Well, okay, we'll switch to Seattle. Is it worth it? We'll switch to Agora, question mark. And we'll see if it's right. If ground will not be very effective in this gen.
Major damage.
Well, it doesn't matter. We will get an extra continue, but...
There's a Pokemon chain. Come back
Go,
for
Chicago,
making
go!
Savage attack. Perfect day.
Chicago. I put my full faith in you from now on.
There goes the battle.
We did it! We did it! We did it! We did it! Da-na-na-na! Now everybody gets to be in the Hall of Fame! Yay! Yay, everybody! Yay! Good job, everybody! I think everybody participated. Except Seattle. They kind of didn't do anything. So this is my Gen 1 team from that playthrough, from my 100% Gen 1 run. It's Agora, the Venusaur, Chicago, the Persian, Vegas, the Mr. Mime, Boston, the Rhydon, Seattle the Zapdos, and Miami the Starmie. So I had to come up with a nickname scheme for these. What motivated me was that I wanted the Surfing Pikachu from Stadium, and I had come up with the nickname of Malibu for the Surfing Pikachu. And from there, I was just like, okay, let's do cities from the US. Let's just do US cities, maybe that I've traveled to, maybe just like find some interestingly named ones. That's the name scheme for this. How old was I in 2016? Maybe very early 20s. If I was doing this in my own time, I probably would have wanted to level them legitimately to level 100 just to see what that process would even be like in Gen 1, because what would you do to level things to 100 in Gen 1? Would you just run the Elite Four over and over and over again? That sounds insane. But perhaps with like the Dodrio Game Boy, maybe that would be doable. I like routed who needed to be at what level for each cup, which is like, I think the majority of the planning that goes into planning a run for Stadium 1. Because you need like Pokemon at level 15 for Pika Cup. You need Pokemon at level, I think, like 50 for Poke Cup. And if I wanted to use the same teams for everything, then I needed to do each cup when I hit those milestones in the game. Because it was so fun to stream Stadium, because it is such a hard game. And you really have to like think 12 steps ahead sometimes. And having an entire focus group of people in my chat to like run my strategies by was so helpful. And I really doubt that I could have done it by myself. And I remember everybody helping me and being so hyped up when I got to Prime Cup Round 2. But I think I was just a newbie to streaming. So I guess I don't know. It drives me nuts that like my whole career, my whole life has been making content about Pokemon. And I did one of the hardest things in the series. And I didn't save it. Okay, anyway. So that's this team. I think also, yeah, this first 100% playthrough was not very strict. I wanted to keep it like semi-entertaining for the people who are watching me. Now, if I would go back and redo it, I would be more hardcore about it. And I think that I would trust my audience more now to want to be there for the grinding, to like keep me company and sort of like chat with me while I was doing the tedious stuff. But back then I was very new to streaming and I was like, no one's gonna want to watch this. So I didn't. Once I got into Stadium, I think I beat Poke Cup with Mr. Mime, because he is in my Hall of Fame in Stadium, but I do not think that I was able to beat Prime Cup with Mr. Mime, and I had to swap him out for our good friend Almond from that high school playthrough. At the time, my games, I guess, had held their save file up till 2016, which is crazy, and I traded him over, or maybe I had him saved in my boxes on Stadium. That's possible, because you can save Pokemon to your Stadium boxes, which is so helpful. But yeah, I traded him over and raised him up, and I think tweaked his moveset a little bit for Prime Cup, because Mr. Mime, oh my god, I love Mr. Mime as a Pokemon, and I will explain why when we get to Gen 4. It's just not Alakazam. Like, Stadium is already such a hard game. I don't know, when I tried to go back and redo some of the Stadium Cups to prepare for this video, I don't know how I did any of Poke Cup with Mr. Mime. Oh, I don't even think I explained how I came up with this composition of Pokemon to begin with, even with the Mr. Mime. So there's like a team, there is like a Gen 1 OU team. Let me see if I can find it. So this is an article, a battling guide in Red, Blue, and Yellow by Hitmonlee on Smogon. And they recommend like Tauros, Exeggutor, Starmie, Alakazam, Rhydon or Golem, Zapdos. Like, you can see like most of the Pokemon that I used on my team are in here. But obviously I made some substitutions for Pokemon that I prefer. So Tauros is really important to Gen 1 because it's very fast. And in Gen 1, crits are based on speed. So if you're fast, you get crazy critical hits, which is why it's such a lethal game. So Tauros being very fast, one of the best Pokemon in Gen 1. Persian is also a very fast normal type with some, I think maybe some moves that also have high crit chance. I'm trying to remember. But obviously Meowth is one of my favorite Pokemon. So I substituted Exeggutor is really important because it can use, is it Hypnosis or Sleep Powder? I don't remember. It's very fast as a grass type, and it has Sleep, which is important. However, I think Venusaur is actually faster, and obviously I prefer Venusaur to Exeggutor. Venusaur is another one of my favorites, and so I substituted in Venusaur. Starmie is there, great Pokemon, no notes, used it. Alakazam, I swapped in Mr. Mime and then had to ultimately kowtow to using Alakazam because, oh my god, there's just nothing that compares to Alakazam in terms of how fast it is and how much damage it does. And Psychic just annihilates everything in the game. And Mr. Mime is just not as good. And I love Mr. Mime so much, but I couldn't use him. I tried to make it work and it wouldn't work. But he was on my in-game team and just couldn't cut it for Prime Cup. And then I picked Rhydon as the option over Golem and used Zapdos. I think that explains every single one of these choices for this team and why it was put together the way it was. That was the team for the in-game playthrough. This was the team for Poke Cup, and this team plus Alakazam instead of Mr. Mime was the team for Prime Cup, except that I also needed to have a Pikachu on my Prime Cup team in order to get the Surfing Pikachu, which was also crazy. I think I maybe even had to have it selected for the final battle. Do not remember. There's really only 3 teams that I had to build for this playthrough. There's this main team, and there is a team for Pika Cup, which I had previously built, and then there is a team for Petite Cup. I don't even think I changed the team for Mewtwo. We did Petite Cup last because I wanted to use the Surfing Pikachu. The whole basis for this whole playthrough, the naming scheme, the Surfing Pikachu was so important to me. So let's load up the Petite Cup team. So this was the Petite Cup team. We have Detroit, the Geodude, Dallas, the Dratini, Malibu, the Surfing Pikachu, Paris, the Meowth, and I'll explain that one in a second. Charlotte, the Ghastly, and Phoenix, the Abra. Yeah, so this was the Petite Cup team. I think this is the only other team that I needed to build, and I actually had this like kind of integrated into my playthrough, so some of these were on my team as I played through the game, and then I had to stop once they reached their goal levels. Let me pull back up the rules of Petite Cup for you. So this is the Petite Cup rules and restrictions. The restrictions include a level restriction. In Generation 1, the Pokemon can only be between level 25 and 30. The combined total level of the 3 Pokemon battle team must be no more than 80. Evolved Pokemon are not permitted. Species that have baby Pokemon in other gens doesn't matter in Gen 1. Mythical Pokemon are prohibited. There's height and weight restrictions. Pokemon must have a height of no more than 2 meters and a weight of no more than 20 kilograms to compete. Only 45 Pokemon were eligible. This is really what's relevant here, the Petite Cup stuff. That was why this team kind of came to be. I'm sure that I also used some kind of guide to put this team together. I'm sure I didn't come up with it myself, but it was 2016 and I didn't save any of that stuff, so unfortunately I don't know who came up with this team. Apologies, I'm not trying to rip you off. So this was the Petite Cup team, not registered. I couldn't try it out just to like relive it and see how hard it was or how the Pokemon did. Probably Abra stole the show and did most of the work. Abra and Geodude, I imagine, handled most of the things, and I maybe got to use the Surfing Pikachu once, and I had to force it in there. I don't know, but it is a fast electric type. Those usually have some utility. Thunder Wave is indispensable in Gen 1. So that's that. And then I wanted to show you, so I have always drawn my teams. I like to draw. I stick to traditional mediums because I grew up drawing on paper with a pencil. Tablets were just not widely available and accessible to me growing up. I just drew stuff for fun on paper, on my schoolwork, everywhere on my desk. It was awful. This is my artwork of my Gen 1 team from that playthrough that I streamed, and many years after the actual playthrough. I didn't draw it at the time. I just wanted to do it later, kind of retroactively. Yeah, I drew this by hand. I colored it with Copic marker. All of the poses and stuff is some of it is referenced from other people's fan art. So there is no way I would do commissions like this or ask people to pay me for this, because this is so much of it is inspired by or directly copied from other people's artwork. I'm not tracing it, but I am looking at their art and pretty much drawing it exactly. So this is really just for me for fun, so I'm not trying to rip anybody off, but I did come up with at least the layout of the Pokemon. The pose is the Rising Star trainer class pose from Gen 6 for the trainer, and then I sort of drew her to look like what I would have looked like as a 6-year-old playing Gen 1 in 1998, which is kind of a weird thing because this is a modern adult team, but in my headcanon, I am perpetually 6 years old whenever I play Gen 1, so I like how it turned out. And it was really fun to do. I love working with Copics. So, okay, moving on to Gen 2. I did actually save, thank God, my notes for Gen 2 for my Crystal playthrough. A lot of people asked me about this. They wanted to see what my 100% run of Pokemon Crystal entailed because I made quite a few videos about it, I feel like. Before I pull up the teams from that, let me maybe pull up my document and show you. Okay, so this is cool. So this is my original document of my Pokemon Crystal playthrough. So this playthrough was, again, I don't really remember my childhood teams for Pokemon, Gen 2. Unfortunately, not only, I would save all of them on my gold version as a kid. Not only were most of them not nicknamed, everything was lost when the save was deleted because the battery died, which none of us saw coming. So, back then I wouldn't have known any method at all to back up my save games, nor would I have thought that would be a thing I would need to do. It just stopped saving, and all of my Pokemon were gone. So I do not remember, unfortunately, any of those Pokemon. I have a drawing of of a team that this would have been from high school. I can also show you that. Let me see. So this, really quick, I'll just show you, is a team from a playthrough I did in high school. The way I would have picked these Pokemon would have been randomized. So what I would do, probably back then, maybe, trying to think how I would have done this at the time, I randomized my teams in my childhood. I don't know when I started doing this. A lot of people love randomizers now, so I don't feel like I need to explain the appeal of doing random teams, but I guess it got to a point where I was replaying the games over and over and over again, and I couldn't come up with new combinations of Pokemon organically. So what I would do was I would do a random number generator. That was when I got older. The way I would do it as a kid was usually I would just dump all of my Pokemon cards in a drawer and then pick them like you're pulling a name out of a hat. I'm gonna guess that's where this team came from. So anyway, the meat of this, here is my Pokemon Crystal 100% playthrough. Note document from I don't know, when did I start this? I would have finished Gen 1. I finished Gen 1 really fast, actually. I did it within a year. I started Gen 1 in spring of 2016. And I, all of the clips from Stadium and finishing Stadium are, from that summer. So it really only took me a few months. And then I guess I probably started Crystal maybe the same year, at the end of the year, in that summer. I remember I kind of started this Crystal playthrough as I was planning to stop doing YouTube and content creation. It was a big change in my life. It was an enormous shift for me because I have been making content for my life, for my living, since I was a teenager almost, since I was 18, and monetization existed on the platform. So I had decided to go back to school at that point, and this was sort of my treat for myself. It really ended up being a very wonderful change in my life, and I think that I kind of associate this playthrough with that time, and it was very exciting, and I liked just getting to do this for myself and have it not be about, have something I do in Pokemon not be about making content. So I didn't stream this playthrough. I streamed some of the shiny hunts for this playthrough because all of the shiny hunts were legitimate. In Gen 2, I took months to soft reset for things, and once I got into breeding, that those shiny hunts are much faster, but there are some that I legitimately would soft reset for months. Some of these hunts took half a year. So, but it was nice to me to just be able to take that long on something again, because I was uploading weekly videos for years and I didn't have time to play the way I love to play. So it's a very special playthrough to me. I'm almost tearing up thinking about it again. So here is my note document. This is the team I settled on. I had 2 different teams that I was debating between, and the way that I came up with this team was I sort of thought back to my mindset during Gen 2, and I thought about the Pokemon cards that were coming out back then. They had introduced light and dark Pokemon, and I was always very fascinated by the concept of the light Pokemon and the light Pokemon cards from, I think, the Neo expansion. It might be one of those other couple that came out at that time. I just loved the idea of a light Pokemon. And so I planned this team and the aesthetic of this team based on what I thought a light Pokemon team would look like. And based on some of the ones that had cards in that set. And there was some freedom here. So my goal for this was to do everything that I had never done in Gen 2, which it turned out was a ton of stuff. Like Gen 2 is a much bigger game than I thought it was, especially compared to Gen 1. There's just so much to do in this game. There's all these events. There's all this stuff that I had never really played the game this way before, maybe. I don't know. Because I really hadn't gotten to do that many replays of Gen 2 because the battery would die. But it also, because of the introduction of breeding and the fact that many of the teams that I realized that I would need for Stadium, I believe I got every single one of these Stadium teams from the same game facts guide, and I'll try and find it in a second. But I realized I had like a significantly more freedom in planning more teams that I would have to breed for with the main team, because I wouldn't be able to get any of those special moves during the playthrough. It would all have to be done in the post game. And so I planned the main team just based on aesthetics, and that was really the first. Don't want to say that was the first ever time I had tried to do that, but it was really like the start of doing that for these 100% playthroughs. So here's a list of the gift Pokemon that could, or like the one-off Pokemon that could be soft reset for. I didn't end up soft resetting for all of these. I ended up getting Chikorita, which I got so lucky with Chikorita. It took me like 100 resets, like almost less than an hour to get a shiny Chikorita. Sudowoodo, I streamed for months and got it on stream, so there's a clip of that. Shucky was also super fast. Shucky the Shuckle and Cianwood, like that was also, and Tyrogue. I did not end up soft resetting for the Coughing in Team Rocket's hideout, for the Electrode, for the Snorlax, for the Dratini. I didn't even end up getting the Extreme Speed Dratini because in the Dragon's Den quiz, they ask you like what's more important, strategy or training, and I think I picked strategy because that's my mindset, is that it's better to under-train and over-strategize, and that's more fun. But I did not get the Extreme Speed Dratini, and I think I was so upset by it. I didn't soft reset for a shiny Dratini either. I did get a shiny Suicune. That was probably the longest soft reset, and I didn't stream that one because it was not a quick like reset. You have to go through a whole cutscene every time. It took a really long time. I didn't do Lugia or Ho-Oh. I did get a shiny Celebi, and I think I've explained this already in a video, but what I did was I bred a legitimate Heal Bell shiny Snubble, and then used arbitrary code execution to change the species into Celebi. So I guess this was not a glitchless run either. I'm more strict about that sort of thing in Gen 3 than in either Gen 1 or 2. And of course, I got the red Gyarados, and while I was playing Gen 2, I was backing up my saves to the Monster Brain, because it's such an investment of time to do Gen 2, and it took me a few years, I think, from replacing the battery to actually finishing the game. And so I was using the Monster Brain to back up my progress as I went, and I was also, I tried to get my husband Chaz to play with me, and so I think we replaced the battery in a silver version for him, but we did it wrong, and like every time you touch the cartridge it would like delete his save data. Eventually it was just too frustrating, and he was like, you know what, respectfully, I want to do this with you, but this is an unreasonable ask. And I was like, okay, that's fair. So but at some point I think I had traded something to him, like this red Gyarados to him, and we backed it up and then traded it back, and I ended up with 2 of this red Gyarados named Douglas. I don't know how I did that. So somehow this Gyarados got duplicated. It wasn't on purpose, but I have 2 of it now. And then I had the goal to breed a shiny into each of the breeding groups, because in Gen 2 the shininess can be passed down because it's based on the individual values. What are they called? They're not called individual values in Gen 2. They're DVs. What are they? Determinate values, I think. Because determinate values are passed down by breeding, so is shininess. So I had like these grandiose plans of breeding into each egg group to get shinies in each category. I just really love the idea of getting all these shinies in this generation that introduced shinies. But this did not end up working because I could not breed. This Gyarados produced 0 shiny offspring. I put it in the daycare up until it was like level 90 with an Ekans, and not like boxes. I think I filled up every box in the stadium multiple times with eggs and just nothing. Got 0 shinies this way. So eventually I ended up having to breed this like a totally different way, but because I was soft resetting for other shinies, I had more to work with. These are kind of failed plans, but I did end up getting some of these. Like, I don't think I ever got a shiny Arbok. I did get a very high level Arbok because it was in the daycare for so long. I don't think I ever got a shiny Ampharos or a shiny Slowpoke or Corsola. I think I just got Havana, the shiny Chikorita, and then bred some of this from here. I did... Whoop, hate that. Okay, I did get the shiny Farfetch, but I ended up just kind of doing them as I went. And then I got Shucky, the Shuckle for that. I got Tyrogue. So these were 2 gifts that I reset for. I did not, like, there's no check mark here. I never got this shiny Coughing for this egg group, so I guess I never needed to breed anything in that egg group. But I got shiny Sudowoodo in my resets. Some things on this list do not have a check mark next to them. It is because I didn't do them. I did not do this glitch for the shiny Ditto. A lot of people do this for Gen 2. I did not end up needing to because it's just so, like, once I had gotten the very long resets for some of these Pokemon, there was no need to get a Ditto. I just had enough. Okay. So, also, something that a lot of people don't know about Gen 2 and Stadium, I did stream this, so I have a record of this. You can use your own Pokemon in the Stadium 2 mini games. So I also wanted to super flex and breed a shiny to use in each of those mini games, which I did. And I think something happens in the Pikachu, the Pichu mini game, like you can use your Pikachu from Yellow in that if you trade over one from Yellow, but I guess I put him back on Yellow afterwards. I don't remember why. And then here is my list of items that I needed to acquire and how to get each one. Some of these were really insane things I had to go out of my way to do. Like, I got super lucky and I got, where is it on here? The Scope Lens. I got the Scope Lens from Stadium 2 Mystery Gift. I got super lucky and I got that. The Miracle Berry. I have an upcoming video that is going to explain how to get this item, so stay tuned. It's now like a 12-page script, so I'm very excited. I think no one is going to be interested in this video except me. So I always know that when that is the case, that I've landed on something that should exist because I would want to see it. Okay, so that's some of these items here. I ended up getting a pink bow for my Clefable. And I think you can only get that from someone's phone number. They will randomly give it to you as a gift. So that's a rare item I ended up getting that I don't think is on this list. And then here are these lists of Pokemon that I will show you in a second, all of these guys. And then maybe we can reference this list again as I pull up these teams and kind of explain how each one I was getting. So I have a note to myself not to use rare candies, which I find interesting. I literally just did this all, I spelled bear wrong. I literally just did this all because I wasn't streaming it, I wasn't doing content, I just took my time and I did, I think, pretty much everything legit, except, I guess, the Celebi thing, but I made that exception. And then this is like a list of Pokemon that I completed as I went, instead of deleting it all, so thank goodness. I have notes to myself about what order to do these in. I wanted to do the Battle Tower. So the Battle Tower in Crystal is interesting. It's like the same exact challenge at different levels, and the reward is just like 9 of 1 vitamin. So I ended up doing the Battle Tower specifically to get vitamins to raise my Pokemon, and I didn't end up doing that as its own challenge. So I think I only did it at level 10, and then this note ended up not being necessary. I think maybe I would like to go back sometime and do some of the higher level Battle Tower cups, but it's very difficult. And because the reward is vitamins, I sort of got the impression that the Battle Tower is really a means to an end, not really like a challenge in itself, at least in this game. And here's stat experience training instructions, which I did for the first time in this playthrough. I stat EXP trained all the Pokemon that I could, and then I guess there's specific instructions here. Let me try and find the Game Facts guide that I got all this from so that you can follow it too if you want. So, and also to give the person credit who came up with all these teams. Okay, I did find a guide on Game Facts with teams in it, but I don't think I used these teams, so this is interesting. So I guess this is another option if you want to use different teams than I did and see how it works out. So yeah, there's like different teams that this person built to use for these cups, which is interesting. But this is not the one I used, so it maybe is this one. Let's see. This is not quite it either. So this is interesting. These have teams that people made, and I remember using a guide from GameFAQs, but these are not the teams that I use. So I don't know if I looked at these and made substitutions or where I got my teams. So I'm very sorry. I'm extremely confused now because I've looked through all three of these guides and I do not see the one I used here. So my apologies to whoever came up with these teams. I promise you, I didn't do it on my own. So it might have been somewhere on Smogon instead. So anyway, let me pull up the teams. We'll get to talking about them. This is the team. We have Vienna, the Ampharos, London, the Clefable, Shanghai, the Lapras, Havana, the Meganium, Madrid, the Espion, and Paris, the Dugong. And I wanted to mention this because I realized I forgot to actually talk about this. I did say I was going to and then forgot about it. Paris, the Dugong. I explained previously that in my Little Cup team for Gen 1, Paris was a name I used for my Meowth. That Meowth was a trade back. I caught it in Gen 2, traded it back over to Gen 1 to teach it, I think, some elemental punches. I don't really remember. So I used the name Paris because I had already decided at that point that when I got to Gen 2, I was going to use a similar nickname scheme to Gen 1, but just expand it to global city names. It just seemed like a nice evolution from Gen 1 being all local to Gen 2 being global. Anyway, so I had got Paris the Meowth in Gen 2 and traded it back, and then I really wanted to use Paris again. I thought it was too good a name to use just for one Pokemon, so I ended up using it a second time for one of my main team. So there are two Pokemon named Paris. Usually it really bothers me when I reuse nicknames like that. I try not to have overlapping nicknames, but it's just sometimes it happens. Like you pick your name scheme and then you realize later that you wanted to save a nickname for a specific Pokemon and it just doesn't work out that way and you don't remember or whatever. That is how this name scheme came together. The Pokemon, as I mentioned earlier, were based on like the concept of light Pokemon, so I gave them all like move sets that were based on lightness. So starting with Havana, that is the starter I received in Crystal. I reset for a shiny Chikorita, and as I mentioned previously, it was a very quick hunt, so it felt like it was meant to be. I think I originally wanted actually to use Jumpluff instead of Chikorita, but when I got the Chikorita so fast, it was like, this is a sign. I'm supposed to use this Pokemon. I ended up going with Meganium instead, and Meganium, this Meganium has both of the screens. It has Reflect and Light screen. Light Pokemon themed. It has Solar Beam as a move, more light moves. Next on the team that was acquired, it was the Clefairy. That was the odd egg, I believe, because you get an odd egg that can be like one of 6 baby Pokemon or something in Crystal, and you get that in Goldenrod from the daycare, and you can reset for it to be different Pokemon, and it has increased shiny chance. So I reset so many times. I got one of every shiny, or multiple of every shiny, before I finally got a shiny Cleffa. And I think that was because on the screen I was playing on like a Game Boy Advance SP. It just didn't look shiny to me on that screen for some reason. The green was not coming through. And that was one of the reasons I actually invested in special custom backlit Game Boy Color, just so that I could see like the shininess more properly if I was doing these long shiny hunts where it was like, I'm not gonna invest a ton of time and then accidentally reset because I can't tell it's shiny. That just doesn't make sense. So yeah, I got a specific custom Game Boy to use for this playthrough. I did not build it myself. I commissioned it. So that is where London the Cleffa came from. London has Metronome on its moveset, which is very fun. It has Moonlight to recover HP, which is extremely useful. This Cleffa is really tanky. Like I used it in Stadium 2 to kind of like get a reminder of what this team was like. I remember that's one of the ways that I actually managed to beat Red under leveled was this Clefable. I mean, I was spamming items too, which is like a viable strategy. You can do it sometimes, but it's just so tanky, and it has like HP recovery with Moonlight. In Gen 2, it really like just became this super useful Pokemon. So great Pokemon. Very recommend Clefable. I think the next Pokemon to join the team was Madrid, which was just the Eevee you get from Goldenrod. It has Psychic, and I think it has Morning Sun, more light-based moves, light Pokemon theme. I think this Pokemon has Cut, which is ridiculous, but I needed to put Cut on a Pokemon, so it ended up with Cut. I think Clefable has Strength. And I do not remember, I don't remember what the last move is. I think it's Bite. because Bite is good coverage, it's special move in Gen 2, which it's like it becomes a physical move later, but in Gen 2 it's special, so it pulls on the special stat, which is actually like a good move for an Espeon. Okay, now this Lapras. So originally, I spent months resetting for this Lapras in Union Cave, and I could not leave the cave until I got Lapras because I needed it to always be, like, it only appears on Friday. So in order for the Lapras to not despawn, I had to stay in the cave the entire hunt. Whereas, like, with some other of the resets, I could leave and do other things and come back or whatever. But not this one. So I was really, like, just stuck here. I streamed a lot of this. I don't think I saved any of the VODs because I never ended up getting this Lapras in Union Cave. I invested months and months and months in this hunt, and I never got it that way. What I ended up doing was, I think I had something in the same egg group. So I ended up catching a non-shiny Lapras from Union Cave and then breeding it. I have to check what the actual, like, egg groups are for these because I don't remember off the top of my head. But I ended up breeding it, I think, with Havana to get the shiny Lapras finally with better odds, because breeding has much higher odds than resetting in Gen 2 because it's DV based. So yeah, so I guess I still earned this one legitimately, but I feel like I took a shortcut. It's still something that haunts me about this Lapras. But it's a great Lapras, has Ice Beam and Surf. Yeah, and I don't remember what else. Finally, there is Paris, the Dugong. I've always thought Dugong was a really pretty Pokemon. I don't know why I haven't really used it that much up until this point, because now I want to put it on everything. It's not that great. Of the two water types, Lapras is much more reliable. I have 2 water ice types, and Lapras is the better one, unfortunately. And this one has a pretty similar moveset to Lapras. I think it has Waterfall instead of Surf, but it also has Ice Beam. But I remember Dugong using Aurora Beam being very pretty in the anime and in the Pokemon cards and stuff, and so it came to my mind when I was thinking of this light-themed team. And so this was the team. This was the Crystal team. And I think this was the first time I did a Copic portrait of a team. Let me pull that up. Yeah, and all the same disclaimers, by the way, apply to this picture as the other one, so I'm not going to repeat them all, but yeah. I didn't buy any new Copics for this drawing. At the time, I was in school and working a part-time job, so that was just not an expense I could justify, unlike the custom Game Boy, apparently. So I didn't buy any new Copics, so I didn't have some of the colors for, like, Espeon and Lapras. So I ended up doing them in, like, cherry red and kind of color correcting them later in Photoshop. They don't really look like their counterparts in the game. And with this pink background, I feel like they look super, super red. But, you know, call it an artistic license. And then the pose of the trainer is Misty's pose from Let's Go, Pikachu and Eevee. Pretty nice for a first attempt. And I added the sparkles in Photoshop to, you know, indicate their shininess. Okay, so the first team I ended up building for Stadium specifically was my Little Cup team. We've already been over the rules of Little Cup. I think it's specifically in Stadium in Gen 2 that they have to be at level 5, because I have a note in my notes that they have to be at level 5. I guess in this document they're kind of in order. The first one that I raised was Bermuda the Abra. It just needed some TMs. The movesets was Psychic, Fire Punch, Ice Punch, and Thunder Punch, and I guess you could buy all those TMs. Very convenient. The second one that I raised was a Scyther. So this was a chain breeding project. I bred a Scyther with a level 44 Heracross that knows Reversal to get one male Scyther that knows Reversal, then raise that Scyther to level 42 for both Wing Attack and Sword Stance, breed another female Scyther that is level 42 and knows both Wing Attack and Sword Stance to get one level 5 Scyther that knows Wing Attack, Sword Stance, and Reversal. And both Heracross and Scyther can be caught in the wild in Crystal, and Endure was the only TM. So Sofia, the Machop, Sofia spelled the way that it is the capital city of Bulgaria. Let's see if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Sofia.
So, Sofia the Machop was new Focus Energy, Karate Chop, and Rock Slide. So, I'm going to read my notes on how I got this Machop. Raised both a male and female Machop in Gen 1 to level 32 so that they will both know Karate Chop and Focus Energy. Will evolve, that's okay, learn Focus Energy at level 36. Teach both Rock Slide via TM48. Trade to Crystal, breed to get one level 5 Machop that knows Focus Energy, Karate Chop, and Rock Slide. And then I taught it Earthquake via TM. Okay, it says, note, Rock Slide is listed as a Gen 1 only move, so if Baby does not know Rock Slide, trade it back to Gen 1 and teach via TM, and then trade it back to Crystal, which I think is the thing I ended up having to do. So I taught it both Rock Slide and Earthquake in Gen 1 when I traded it back, so that I wouldn't have to duplicate a TM in Crystal for this. Side note, something that's super useful in Crystal, no, in Stadium 2, is there's like cases for items, but I think you have to have beaten the game to use them, so semi-useful, but a very easy way to transfer like TMs from one generation to another if you need it. So here is a Pokemon that I raised, that I bred for Little Cup and ended up using in every subsequent cup, and that is this Cubone named Rome. Rome is based on Rome, Italy. To get this Cubone, I raised a male Larvitar to level 22 with so that it would learn both Rock Slide and Screech, bred with a female Cubone for a level 5 Cubone that knows Rock Slide and Screech. Both can be caught in Crystal. Get one with Hidden Power, Bug, Dark, or Ghost for convenience sake, it says. So I think I didn't note down what it has, but when I was using it in Stadium to prep myself for this video, I think it's basically coverage for Psychic type Pokemon. It's a little redundant because most Psychic type Pokemon have really low defense, so there's a very niche situation in which you would actually need to use that move over something with stab like Earthquake. Specifically for Little Cup, though, it doesn't use Hidden Power. It uses that later for a different cup. It had Headbutt for Little Cup, for Flinch, I guess. So I have all these wonderful notes about all this minutia and things like that. I don't know if all that's really interesting. Another fun fact about this team, though, is that this Elekid is shiny. I bred specifically a shiny Elekid for this team, and I ended up 3 shiny Elekids in one box of eggs, and not knowing it because you can't use the box trick if the colors are too similar. And I have an entire video inspired by this Elekid, basically explaining how to use boxes in Stadium 2 to more conveniently shiny hunt in Gen 2 using eggs and viewing the eggs in Stadium to see what color they are. So it didn't work specifically for this Elekid, and I ended up with a ton of shiny Elekid trying to get this one. Thankfully, it happened really quick, so I just hatched the first box and got like a ton of them. Okay, so we are now on to the next team, which is the Poke Cup. So we have Rome, the Marowak, Luanda, the Machamp, Lima, the Dodrio, Beijing the Kingdra, Cairo, the Houndoom, and Berlin, the Jolteon. Of these, Lima, Cairo, and Berlin are shiny, and the other 3 are not. So Rome is returning from Little Cup. Shall we look up the Poke Cup rules? Because there's some specific Poke Cup rules I don't think we've gone over. So here we are. These are the rules for Poke Cup. The cup has a level restriction on it as well, only allowing Pokemon between the levels of 50 and 55 to compete. In addition, the 3 Pokemon team chosen by the player at the beginning of a battle may not have a total level sum above 155. That means that as well, that the 6 Pokemon team chosen to compete cannot have more than 4 Pokemon at level 55. So there's some specific rules and some specific banned Pokemon, but basically it's just level 50 to 55. I think there was some reason I couldn't use Zapdos here. Maybe because it was already level 100 from Stadium 1. I think that's right. So Zapdos and Alakazam were already level 100 from Stadium 1, so I could not use them here. So I have Dodrio and Jolteon to make up for Zapdos. And because there's 2 of them, there's no room for Alakazam. I picked their shininess because I had laid their sprites out like in a folder and looked at them all together and decided that these, like, this combination of shiny and non-shiny Pokemon looked the best together. Especially since these would be recurring Pokemon in other teams. Like, I'm insane, you guys. There's so many levels to my insanity. But I was doing this for fun, just for me. Like, I wasn't streaming this. I wasn't trying to impress anybody. It was just like, this is what I found fun in my free time. I mean, I guess I was streaming the shiny hunts, but that was mostly to make them, like, more entertaining for myself. And I would just kind of drop in randomly. There wasn't a schedule for those. Marowak in Gen 2 is an extremely reliable Pokemon, like just so useful. So is Jolteon. Jolteon is a really good Pokemon. Using it in this cup made me love it even more than I already did. Super reliable. So is Kingdra. That's no surprise. It's the new dragon type for that generation, has like virtually no weaknesses, super defensive, also hard hitting, a lot of coverage, great Pokemon. And Luanda would also make a reappearance in several later cups. Same with Cairo. Cairo has a very specific niche usage. It's there to counter the teams of all psychic types that you run into. So it has its uses, but it's not like it's not like one of the Pokemon that like gets used in almost every match the way that Jolteon and Marowak were. Machamp is a little tricky. Like, Machamp is really great, but you have to be careful when you use it, because if you switch it in, a lot of things will just knock it down to half health or way more, because it has a very low special defense, I think, being a Gen 1 Pokemon. So before, special was one stat. So in Gen 1, the Pokemon that had special attacks also had really high special defense. And the Pokemon that had physical attacks had typically very low special defense. So you could kind of like, it really was more like a rock, paper, scissors type thing where it's like, okay, that one's a physical attacker. I can probably kill it with special moves. Very true of Machamp in particular. But it's great for physical. You know, you need something to deal with the normal types because, especially in Gen 1, they hit like a truck. So they're also fast. So I'm not going to bore you with like all of the minutia of how I got each one. It's all in that document. I don't know, maybe I'll put it in a paste bin or something. I think that there are some people who wanted to see it. You can review it at your leisure, use it for your own runs of Crystal, whatever you want to do. Oh, Luanda, by the way, I had to look up what this was, is the capital of Angolia. Then as we got into Prime Cup, our level 100 cup, we have a couple changes. Lima and Berlin are retired because now we can use Zapdos from Gen 1, which covers the two Pokemon at the same time, basically, which makes room for Almond. So it's a very fun kind of cross-generational run where some of the Pokemon that I raised for Stadium 1 got to come back. It's very funny that this Alakazam that I raised like in high school got like such a long career. I think that's one of the really fun things about being able to transfer them up, because you get these like really long storylines, almost like they're professional athletes. Like, he's a veteran at this point, this Alakazam. I replayed all of Prime Cup with this team because I was smart enough to register them for Stadium 2. So pretty much everyone on this team got like a time when they were super useful. So a very good team overall. Not too different from the first time. I think a couple moves changed here and there, but yeah, this Marowak also had a super long career. It started in Little Cup and then was used all the way up through, I think, the next team, which is like, it's maybe the only Pokemon that was in all of my Stadium 2 teams. So the next team is the rival team. So for the rival fight, there were a few changes to the team. We welcome Jakarta, the shiny Scizor, Seoul, this shiny Umbreon, named for Seoul, South Korea. We have Beirut, the Tyranitar, and Kingston, the Snorlax. So on my list, I was, I guess, originally going to soft reset for a shiny Snorlax, but then ultimately decided not to do that. I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, I guess I put the shiny sprite in this team and decided it wasn't worth the effort. I think that this Umbreon is actually the sibling of Berlin because they're both shiny Eevee. Okay, I think the reason that I didn't soft reset for the Snorlax is actually because I needed it to have Shadow Ball, which I got passed down through breeding because I needed to use the TM for something else. I did not replay the rival fight before this video. I ran out of time, so I don't really remember. I remember this fight being much easier than I was anticipating because the rival basically just has like all the legendaries and that's it. But yeah, that was the end of my Stadium career. I think Stadium 1 is like legitimately one of the hardest games ever made. I know that you can just use Mewtwo and like destroy it, but if you don't use Mewtwo, it is so difficult. It's so hard. The battle system in Gen 1 is just so unforgiving. Gen 2 is much easier, much, you know, it's kind of a breezier time. Like when I replayed it with the registered teams, these teams are just very good for these cups. So I guess my Gen 1 teams were much less optimized because I used some of my favorites instead of taking artistic liberties with the suggested guides. I just followed the guides exactly for Gen 2, so I had a much easier time. Maybe I learned my lesson and that's why I did it that way. So that wraps up our Gen 2 retrospective for the teams. Let's move on to Gen 3. Okay, so before we get into the 100% playthrough of Gen 3, I'm going through my like folder of stuff I collected for this. At the time, this is like when I start having a memory of specific Pokemon other than just that like one Charizard from Gens 1 and 2. Because I used to start nicknaming my Pokemon back then. And I would still do the thing where I would like restart a million times, but I had both Ruby and Sapphire and I had a Game Boy Advance and a Game Boy SP. I was a very spoiled child. So I would trade myself my own Pokemon to Sapphire and restart my Ruby over and over and over again. And then I kept those Pokemon, and I still have many of them. Some of them are still on my Gen 3 games. Like some of them I still have one of those old Ruby save files. Many old Pokemon are still on that game. I transferred up some of them that were like the most memorable to me. And those are on my Omega Ruby now, full circle moment. So I can actually show you some of my original Pokemon from back in the day. Isn't that fun? So some of these Pokemon are like almost 20 years old. Maybe they are 20 years old because I guess they predate my YouTube career, right? So let me pull up my Pokemon. So I had these all in my Pokemon bank, but as a precaution, since I never got Pokemon home, oh my god, my banks. Since I never got Pokemon home, we're just gonna have to work with it. I moved them all out of bank since I don't know when that service is just going to be inaccessible. So they're all just on this game now. And I have it backed up. I backed up the save data because now I care about that sort of thing and I know how to do it. So this is what's on my Ruby. So let's see. This is one of my original Explouds, and I should explain how I used to pick the nicknames for these. So I had a directory that, back in the day, probably a lot of you don't remember this, but back in the day, like for your elementary school and your middle school, they would like print out little booklets of everybody's contact information so that you would have like the phone numbers of your classmates and their parents so that if you needed to work together on a project or something, you could call them and like get in touch with them. So I had a school directory, and I would just go through that and name Pokemon names from this directory. It was just like a list of names. And I don't know why I did this. So this is like named after like some random kid's mom that I went to school with, I guess. That's so weird. But yeah, so I would just pick names off a list. So this is Debbie the Exploud, raised by Mark, who was me. My name is not Mark. It was probably also some kid or their parents from my school. The OT on this one is just A, all caps A, which means that I used an action replay in Gen 3 to get this. So in Gen 3, as you know, I've ranted about this. It was very hard to get certain Pokemon in Ruby and Sapphire. I think Pikachu was in the Safari Zone, so I really didn't need to cheat to get a Raichu. So I don't know why I did this. But yeah, I guess I saved this Raichu from that time. And here's another one from Mark, Alex the Gardevoir, and Claire the Torkoal, Paul the Wailord, Wendy the Cacturn, and then I have Jacqueline and Carlo the Crobats. And you can see that like these are caught in Master Balls, which means that I cheated to get Master Balls and then used a Master Ball and a Zubat. And then here's another one, Stacy the Walrein, Eileen the Breloom. Okay, and then this is one that's very memorable to me, Julie the Azumarill, which I guess I went back and like EV trained and gave a moveset and stuff. And then Debbie, another one named Debbie. The Exploud and the Seviper are both named Debbie. Pierre. This one is from a trainer named Marina, so it's one of my like additional save files. So yeah, there's just like a lot of these type of guys. So that was an embarrassing look at my childhood Gen 3 game Pokemon that are like all 20 years old. I do have some like older drawings of some of these Pokemon teams. I don't know when exactly they're from. They're in colored pencil. You could see Debbie the Seviper in this drawing. And here you can see Stacy the Walrein, and maybe Pierre the Swampert, and Debbie the Exploud, and Alex the Gardevoir, and Wendy the Cacturn, and I guess two others, a Medicham and a Armaldo that I guess I don't have anymore, or they're somewhere else. And then there's Julie the Azumarill, and the Torkoal I've already forgotten the name of. Vina the Sandslash, which is somewhere, but I don't remember where. There's Cookie the Coughing, which is a coughing I got from my friend at musical theater camp. So yeah, these are some of my childhood Pokemon in these drawings. I think these drawings are not from childhood. But yeah, just like some of my old Pokemon. So I don't have teams from my childhood that I can talk about, but those are some of my old Pokemon. And then we have to jump all the way back into the future to talk about the teams that I do have from Gen 3. I've got my Emerald team, I have my Fire Red Leaf Green team, and then I have some teams that I used for the battle content in XD Gale of Darkness and Pokemon Coliseum. And then I have a few teams for the Battle Frontier that are complete that I can talk about. Okay, so you guys have heard me talk about this quite a bit before, but Gen 3 was really like my white whale of completionism because it was so hard for me as a kid to grapple with the idea that I had to beat 7 entire games. Like, you know how in Gens 1 and 2, I explained that I really didn't care about completing games. I just wanted to play them over and over again with different teams, and then restart. So I didn't have beat save files of all of my games, and Gen 3 really threw a wrench in that because in order to play them again and again with different teams, I would have to have completed copies of other games to trade myself Pokemon to do the playthroughs with, and it was just maddening to me that I had to have constantly maintained completed copies of 7 games in order to replay Gen 3 with different teams. So there was a lot in Gen 3 I had never done, and there's a lot of games in Gen 3 that you have to do in order to do some of the things in other games. It's just sort of in and of itself an undertaking to even plan how to 100% Gen 3 because you have to figure out which games you need to do in which order to get things for other games. It's a nightmare. So I knew that I would have to replay Fire Red and Leaf Green in order to sort of open up the door to getting Pokemon for Emerald and other things. In my Gen 3 100% run, Leaf Green was first on the chopping block. And I've talked about this already, that I don't really like playing Leaf Green. And I mentioned already in this video that I have replayed Gen 1 so many times with the same Pokemon that it was really hard to come up with a new combination of just Kanto Pokemon to use again, and a new way to make the game interesting. So what I ended up doing for this playthrough was kind of a modified Professor Oak's challenge. So let me pull up a rule set for Professor Oak's challenge so you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is an explanation of the Professor Oak's challenge by Niwat from the Poke Community Forums. So the core rules are you must get every single Pokemon available before each gym in the game. We're talking about Kanto, so each gym. It's not enough to just get your starter, Pidgey, Rattata, etc. in Kanto before fighting Brock, for example, but you have to get them to their highest evolution possible before you can fight that gym leader. You would need to get all of the bugs in Viridian Forest, get your starter fully evolved to its 3rd stage before you can fight Brock. There are some Pokemon that it's not possible to fully evolve them. For example, you can't really get a Thunderstone prior to Brock. You can get Pikachu and call it a day there, and then evolve it as soon as you get the stone for it. So basically, the goal is to complete the Pokedex and take it extremely seriously to the point where you're catching and evolving every single Pokemon as soon as it is available to you and as soon as you can do it. So that means you end up grinding a lot in the beginning of the game because you have to. So I modified this. When I did this for myself for this run, it wasn't enough for me to just do the one starter or, just the one game. So I would also trade myself all 3 starters and then get all 3 of them up to level 36 to fully evolve them before Brock. So that is what I did. And then for the main team that I used in the game, I bent the rules of the challenge a little bit so that I could not be severely overleveled for the actual gameplay. So this was the team that I built. I did not make myself fully evolve Charizard before Brock, but I did fully evolve Venusaur and Blastoise. So I don't know, some people would probably say that doesn't count at all as Professor Oak's challenge, but it was still, it was still interesting to do to the point where I enjoyed doing it. And I think that's kind of the goal of this sort of thing. So by the time I beat the Elite Four, I had 151 out of 151. It was very satisfying in that regard. But it took a very long time at the very start of the game where you have to fully evolve some guys that evolve quite late by grinding them in Viridian Forest. So also Clefairy took a long time because you have to catch a bunch of Clefairy to get enough Moonstones to evolve Nidoran and Jigglypuff. Clefairy, I think almost all of the Moonstone evolutions are available prior to Mount Moon, so you have to stop there and just get a bunch of very low % held item drops from Clefairy. But it was really, I I think I had a good time with it, and along the way, when I was not grinding, I recorded that entire playthrough for the review that I did. I wanted to explain why I picked these 6 Pokemon, because, like I said, I have a hard time deciding Kanto games. Like, how the heck am I going to come up with a unique combination of Pokemon for this? What I ended up doing was I went through the teams in Stadium 1 and just looked for a nice combination of Pokemon that I hadn't used yet that kind of looked cool. And this old man in Pokecup had these Pokemon, and I was like, okay, I don't think I've used this combo yet, so... And they look pretty nice together. So that's what I did. That was my team. Just completely copied this team. No creativity involved. I think I even copied the movesets. Like, I went out of my way to get the exact movesets that he uses. So yeah, it was like kind of a weird combo gentleman roleplay plus Professor Oak's challenge run. But you know, it probably made it as fun as it could have been, considering I don't like that game that much. Then when Fire Red and Leaf Green were done, I still couldn't start Emerald yet. I was still waiting to do Emerald last, so I had to do Coliseum and XD before I could start Emerald, which was awful because I really hate Coliseum, as you also already know. I didn't play this just because I wanted to make content about it. I did it because Gen 3 has been like this frustrating thing that I haven't been able to conquer my entire life because of the way I played Pokemon games as a kid. And so when I say I had to play Coliseum, no one was putting a gun to my head, obviously. And I was still doing it of my own volition because I wanted to. I didn't enjoy it because I don't like the game. I wanted so badly to finally do all of it. And so I did it. Actually played Coliseum way too much, and then got way too upset about it and made a bunch of videos about it. But and some things that are hard in life provide the most personal growth. And I'm sure in some way through this experience I grew somehow. And I don't know if I could tell you what exactly. How it bettered me as a person, maybe it did. Okay, anyway, so in Coliseum, because I was playing Coliseum just to finish the game, I did not have a set team of Pokemon that I used. Instead, as you know, and as I complained about, I rotated in all of the Pokemon in the game to most efficiently purify all of them. But what I did have is a team that I built for the post-game content in Coliseum, and many of those Pokemon were Pokemon that I acquired during the playthrough of Coliseum. So, another thing, I did not initially plan to learn RNG manipulation for Gen 3. I thought I would just, if I wanted a shiny or a specific nature for something, I would just take it slow like I did Gen 2 and soft reset for everything. Coliseum and my disdain for it kind of broke me down to the point where I realized that I would not have the patience to do that this time. I ended up learning RNG manipulation in Coliseum, Sapphire, and Emerald to sort of get some of the Pokemon that I planned. I've already shown you the spreadsheet that I built at the very beginning of all of this, so I won't bring that back out again. But I knew that there were some Pokemon that I needed to get and that I wanted them to have specific natures, and I was originally just like miserably redoing parts of the game to try and soft reset for them, and I was like, no, I'm breaking down. I'm just gonna learn RNG manipulation, which in Coliseum was also really difficult. So I did grow in some way from this. I learned how to use RNG manipulation, and I actually made a great friend, I'm a Blissey, who taught me a lot and helped me. But anyway, so I'm kind of rambling now. Let's talk about this Coliseum team. So I think I actually forgot to explain my nickname scheme when I started this Gen 3 section. So I explained as a child that I, for some reason, arbitrarily picked names out of my school directory for my Pokemon. You know, everybody has to start somewhere with nicknaming stuff. I think I realized that I wanted them to finally have nicknames, but then I couldn't come up with anything, so I just picked names at random. So when I did this Gen 3 100% run, I decided that I would also sort of arbitrarily pick names from a list, except I wanted them to kind of be like, you know, I didn't want them to be names of like real people or anything like I had used as a child, or names that weren't interesting. Like I wanted them all to be interesting names. So I thought about it, and I was playing. During my Gen 2 run, I played through and 100% completed, like while I was shiny hunting stuff, all of the Spyro the Dragon games, because they were very nostalgic games to me on the PlayStation, at around the same time of Gen 2, and it was like, you know, a great thing to do kind of side by side. In Spyro 3, which is my favorite of the 3 Spyro games, you collect eggs, and the eggs have a bunch of really silly names, and I think some of them are named after, like, inside jokes from the developers, or maybe some of them are actually named after developers of the game, or I don't know how they came up with these egg names. But I thought that would be a perfect list of names to use to sort of recreate my childhood nickname scheme for Gen 3. And so that's where these names came from. It was true for the Fire Red, Leaf Green games, so all those names were also from Spyro. All of these names are from Spyro, and all of my Emerald team names are from Spyro. And somewhere in there I also played through Sapphire, which I did for the review, kind of like only for the review. And I also named all of those Pokemon after eggs in Spyro. So that's where all these names are from. And then eventually I ran out of those names, but I think I, in my spreadsheet, picked out all of these nicknames before I started any of the games. So I knew that I would not run out during this process, and I sort of chose specific names for these Pokemon. So that's why they all have weird nicknames. So, the first one of this team that I acquired was Entei, and Entei is where I broke down and decided that I was not going to soft reset for all of these Pokemon, and I would just learn RNG manipulation because this was awful. So I started by trying to soft reset for a lonely Entei by doing the Dakim fight over and over and over again. And I had it down to like a choreographed fight where I would pick the same things every time, and it would like the same moves would play out, and I would get to Entei and catch it and just check. Did RNG manip in Coliseum for Entei, for the Suicune, for the Heracross, for the Tyranitar? I have to check. Let me check my notes. Yeah, apparently I RNG manip for this, the Tyranitar's not even on the screen. It's in this team. So for there's a level 50 and a level 100 for Coliseum, and I did them both. And for level 50, I used Flygon instead, and I'll explain where this Flygon came from. It did not come from Coliseum. But I RNG manip for the Tyranitar. I don't think I did for this Metagross, because I bred a lot of Metagross, and I think this came from like the huge lineage of Metagross that I bred. Very difficult. Suicune was really, really hard because you have to learn Blink RNG for Suicune. If you want to know how any of this works, I really recommend I'm a Blissy's videos. Very informative. They have tutorials for like I don't know if every Pokemon game you can do this in, but like certainly every Gen 3 game. Every game I've tried to RNG manipulate in, there were tutorials for how to do it. So yeah, and then the other 3 Pokemon on this team I bred in using Egg RNG. Another wonderful facet of Gen 3 RNG that's kind of tedious and very frustrating, but better than legitimately breeding things. And I did want to learn how to legitimately breed in Gen 3 because I wanted to know if this was something they actually expected you to do at this point. Because there wasn't like an IV checker back then. There kind of was, but it wasn't very specific, and it was only an Emerald. And so I was like, there's no way they expected you to like control the IVs in any way, right? So I wasn't planning on getting like good IVs on some of these Pokemon, but like if I was RNGing for the nature anyway, I might as well. So that's why some of these have like better stats. Yeah, you just fall down this rabbit hole of like, as long as you're controlling for one factor, you might as well like just get like a great Pokemon that you wouldn't otherwise. I don't know. This sort of breaks my doing it like perfectly legitimately, doesn't it? But you know, legitimate is kind of, in a single player game, it's kind of a state of mind, right? I wanted to know what they expected to be possible, which I actually kind of learned more through RNG manipulation than anything, because you can kind of like see all of the spreads in the game. And so you find out like that they really didn't intend anybody to have like really great IVs at this point. So they're kind of icing on the cake, but I guess knowing that they weren't necessary sort of made me feel less bad about doing it. I don't know. I can justify this however I want. It's only a single player game. So I think that I got this team from a game facts guide again. I don't know what the guide is. And I actually do not recommend this team, actually, for the content in Coliseum, or I think XD, because you actually get penalized for using Suicune and Entei, which I did not know prior to doing this. You get rewarded for winning in Poke Coupons, which can be exchanged for unique berries or battle items or TMs. Like there's a lot of good stuff you can get with Poke Coupons. You get penalized and get fewer Poke Coupons if you use like legendaries like Entei and Suicune. So I went out of my way to get these specifically to use for this mode, and then I got penalized for using them. So I don't know what a good replacement for them would be, or have recommendations in that regard. Probably Starmie instead of Suicune. It's a common sub, and Entei's just not like that great, so pretty much anything. But yeah, so don't use this team. Sorry to whoever built it, but like this is not the optimal team for Coliseum, and I learned that through experience, and I'm passing that on to you now. Okay, here we go. So it's gonna use Sunny Day. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's gonna use Sunny Day, get rid of our sand, I think. Probably, right? And we're gonna get faked out by Shiftry. Yeah. Oh, I remember now. It uses Sunny Day and then Shiftry has Solar Beam, and then I'm boned. Okay, so it's gonna fake out Ruby though. So Ruby's not gonna get to go. I think Earthquake is fine. We could get a Protect on Regirock the first turn though. So I think Earthquake might be the way to go, because then we at least get damage on everybody. There's the fake out, right on Ruby. Yep, there's that fake out. There's the Sunny Day. Okay, I was worried it was gonna protect. Ooh, I wish that did more. I really wish that did more, because we're gonna get Solar Beamed in the face on Ryan, and Regirock is gonna use Ancient Power on Ruby. I have to protect with Ryan. Maybe it would be better to endure with Ruby? It does have Chlorophyll, you're right. Ooh, that's why I keep having this problem. Okay, so you're right. So if we endure, Shiftry will be faster. So we need to just go for it. I think Ruby will be faster than Regirock at least. Oh my gosh, this is like chess right now. If we endure this turn with Ruby, Shiftry will be faster. We're protecting with Ryan. But that means next turn that Shiftry will target Ruby, which means Ryan's free to attack. However, we need to kill Shiftry, and Ryan can't do that. So I think we still need to Mega Horn this turn. It's using Protect. That's fine, we don't care about it right now. We're protecting. Oh, it's exploding! But why? I should have endured. Why? You had the upper hand in that fight. What was the purpose? Okay, well, Shiftry is dead, which means the entire rest of the team is weak to water, so we can rain dance and screw up all their stuff. So now we finally get into the Emerald playthrough. I knew that I wanted to use a shiny Venusaur. So before the playthrough even started, I RNG'd in Sapphire, Wild, Swablu, and Meryl, and they are both the same frame. So they have the same nature and probably the same IVs. And then I egg RNG'd this Venusaur because I wanted it to have Magical Leaf as an egg move. And I guess this was sort of like my, you know, if I think about like Emerald, what that makes me think of, I think of the Emerald City from The Wizard of Oz and the Yellow Brick Road. And I think that that's kind of what I was going for here. So I liked Magical Leaf. I liked the yellow and the green together. And then like the little tiny pops of red in there with like the ruby slippers. I don't know, this is my Wizard of Oz team. I think maybe I hatched the egg in Sapphire, made sure it was the nature I wanted, reset, and then traded the egg over and hatched it in Emerald so that it would obey me. That sounds like something I would do. I have a bunch of like pictures of this team as it was developing because I was taking pictures a lot. Again, I wasn't making content about this. This was just for fun for me. Vanessa, before, you know, like in the middle of the game, I think this was at Mauville City. This is what we were working with at the time. I'm guessing that I caught more than one routes and then picked one with like the nature I wanted. Most likely. And then here is my Swablu Daisy at that point in the game. And here's Bruce. Oh, here's Jenny. It actually looks like I hatched the egg in my leaf green because the original trainer is my leaf green. So I guess I just was fine with it not obeying me. So this was, oh, I remember what I did to evolve this. So I have my Linoon squad I really abused pickup in this playthrough. So I wasn't working with like a full party. So whenever I wasn't using like extra slots in my party, I had Zigzagoons in my party so that they would pick up items, and I got really lucky. And this early in the game, you can see that Jenny's level 9. I got a King's Rock from one of them. Although I see that there's a Ralts named Amber in there. I wonder if that was like a synchronized one that I caught to try and get specific natures or something, because that's definitely not Vanessa. And so that playthrough is still underway. I am streaming. I don't know if I really need to go into like each one of my battle frontier teams. I'm still streaming those. So, oh, you know what? I should explain. Okay, I'll explain a few of them. Hang on. So before we move on from this, here is the most recent portrait. Again, this is done in Copic markers. Again, I referenced fan art, or I think a lot of these were like TCG poses from the trading card game. Yeah, it's not that impressive, but I like doing these. Even the trainer is sort of ripped off of Skyla's trading card game artwork, where, not Skyla, Lycia from Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, where she's hugging her Altaria. That's that pose, and that's why her face looks pretty different from the other characters that I drew. I thought it still looked Pokemon-y because it is Lycia, and she's got like a different face, but I kind of regret doing that. I wish that I did the eyes more similarly to the other two drawings, but and I had her dressed this way in this drawing because in the secret base you get assigned a trainer class when you mix records with people in Gen 3, and it's based on your trainer ID, and the class that was assigned to my trainer was the lady. So I thought, okay, she's the main character, but she's a lady, so what would that look like? So this is sort of like, what if May was a lady? And then also I sort of Gen 3ified this uniform and made it a little bit less of a long gown by copying the trainer. Was it the cool trainer, I think, from Coliseum, the one that wears like a purple uniform dress like this? So that's why it's green instead, is because she's supposed to be the lady trainer class. Anyway, yeah, that's this portrait. So I have a handful of other teams for Gen 3. They're like teams in the sense that like I designed them for challenges, but they're not 6 Pokemon because there's like a 3v3 thing in a lot of the Battle Frontier. So this is my Battle Tower team, and this is, I think, the only one of these Frontier teams that I'm going to talk about, because I don't think I have that much to say about the other ones. They're just like, you know, RNG'd Pokemon, and all kind of the same story that I bred them, or whatever it is that I did to get them. But in this case, the Latios has an interesting backstory, so I thought I would tell you. So this Latios is one named Shemp, which if you play Spyro is familiar to you. As a kind of a running joke in the Spyro series. But so Shemp, I had already done the roaming Latias in Emerald. Shemp was the Eon ticket, and I actually have 2 Eon tickets, one of which was given to me by someone at Tokyo and Tulsa, and I still have that. I want to frame it eventually because it's so wonderful, and I'm so grateful for that. And then the other one was a loose, like the one that I got at Tokyo and Tulsa, it's like in the pamphlet that it originally came in, and it's like glued shut. I don't want to like mess with it. But the other one that I got was from Josh, the Jaywitz. When I went and did that cleaning video at his house, he's like, oh, I don't want this anymore. Do you want it? And I was like, yeah. So I have an extra Eon ticket. And yeah, so I used that to get this Latios. And then this was my first, maybe not my first, one of my first video RNG in Emerald. And this is now kind of outdated because there's an additional way in Gen 3 to kind of get to these bizarre super late frames. This may not make any sense to you if you don't know anything about RNG, so I'm sorry, but basically this Latios was a super late frame. I have the document here, so let me pull it up. This Latios was on this frame. This is a really late frame. I think I had to leave my game on for an entire month to get to this frame. And every day I was checking like which frame I was on, and I don't really remember how I did that because this was years ago at this point, but I would like write down what frame I was on progressively to keep track of how long it had been and how much longer there was to go. And then once I got close, like within the buffer I wanted to leave was 1,000, it was 5,100 frames. I made a battle video in the battle frontier, which will save whatever frame you're on. So then you can pull it up and watch battle Latios and then like have like, you know, do the RNG from there and try and get like the delay and all that stuff. You know how it works. If you know how RNG works, you know how it works. And if you don't, this makes no sense to you. So basically I left the game on for a month to get this Latios. So, and I was very diligently checking it and being careful. And so, you know, RNG can still be quite a bit of a time investment and a lot of work, and you have to learn a lot of stuff to do it. Because this sounds like nonsense, right? If you have no idea what I'm talking about. But this was my battle tower team. This was still super hard, even with these like engineered RNG Pokemon to get. I got to 100 wins to get the decoration, and I still have that streak. It's just like it takes half an hour to clear 7 Pokemon now because I have to think about each move so hard to make sure I don't lose that streak. So I haven't like continued it, even though I probably will at some point just to get the battle points for it. So these Pokemon are the 3 that I used to get to 100 wins. And I streamed the whole thing. And it was one of the hardest things I think I've ever done in any Pokemon game, including Stadium. So that and the Battle Factory, which I also made a video about explaining. So, yeah, very difficult thing to do. And I'm not looking forward to doing it again in Gen 4. So as you know, I've not done my 100% Gen 4 playthrough yet. We planned it together in the last video. So now we're going back in time, once again, for the start of Gen 4 to probably 2009. As you know, I was not a really big fan of pretty much any Pokemon game from Fire Red and Leaf Green to Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I didn't like Coliseum, XD, or Diamond and Pearl. I don't have a memorable Diamond and Pearl team to show you, sorry. Probably the closest thing is this, which is the team that I used for the playthrough when I made the Diamond and Pearl review. And I love the nicknames that I picked for these because it's really just like my state of mind when I'm playing Diamond and Pearl. I'm just such a pleasant human, really. But so we have to flash forward to when Heart Gold and Soul Silver released. This was also a random team for me. I already explained that I used to pull like Pokemon cards out of drawers and stuff to randomize my teams in the past. At this point, I was doing something kind of more like this. So now it's just built into Google. You can randomly generate a number. But back in the day, I used to go to random.org, and I guess it's still around. And so I would go to numbers, integers, and then I would generate random values between 1 and 493, format in one column, and then I would just get the numbers. This site is so old. So these would be like the 4 Pokemon in this example of the playthrough that I would be doing. It's so cool that this website is still here. It's from 1998. And then I would go to like Cerebi or something and find these dex numbers, and that would be the team. So that was how I came up with this team, which is quite random, obviously. I named all of them after, well, with the exception of Mr. Mime. So I don't know why I did this, because I know that I bred a Mr. Mime specifically for this playthrough, because I started with Mime Jr., but I still nicknamed it Marcel after the one that you get in an in-game trade in Gen 1. And so he's the only one in this team with a name that doesn't fit the nickname scheme, and the rest of them are named after Vegas hotels on the Strip, because that was the time period of my life when I moved to Las Vegas for my senior year of high school, and I was very excited about it. So there's Marcel the Mr. Mime, there's Luxor the Glaceon, there's Stardust the Ampharos. Stardust was not a hotel on the Strip at that time, but I loved Showgirls. So I named it after the hotel the Showgirls takes place in. Then Sahara the Hippowdon, Caesar the Ursaring, and Rio the Masquerain. I got really attached to this team. I still have all of these Pokemon in my Omega Ruby. I've migrated them up through the years, and like this was also the first team I ever EV trained, because that was another huge hurdle for me. When we got up to the online generations, all of a sudden, everyone knew how to EV train, and it was like super important to everybody. And I was this huge Pokemon nerd, and my life was Pokemon, and it was like this ego wound to me that I didn't know something about Pokemon that everyone else suddenly knew. So it was like a sticking point for me that I had to learn how to EV train, even though I wasn't really doing anything at that time in my life that I would have needed to EV train for. I wasn't battling online. I wasn't doing the frontiers. I just wanted to know how it worked, and I hated that people knew something about Pokemon that I didn't. So I EV trained this in-game team as the first time I ever EV trained anything. The experience of going through that with these Pokemon made me like feel super attached to them because I put all this effort literally into raising them. And then Heart Gold is just such a wonderful game for getting like really close with your buddies in your game because they follow you around, you talk to them, they give you stuff, you can take pictures with them. So we're gonna go through my save file. I have it open here and we're gonna go look at my baby team through all the pictures that are saved on this game, and I'm probably gonna cry. I remember I got the golden crown for this Ursaring for Caesar. This was also the first time I ever completed a Pokedex, was in this playthrough. So this was like a big moment for me. I think maybe I was still cheating sometimes at the time, so I don't know like how legitimate all of it was. Oh, I definitely cheated because I remember that I gave Ursaring, I think I gave Ursaring Surf or something because maybe I gave it Fly too. It needed a Pokemon that could surf, and obviously none of these Pokemon on this team can do it. And let's take a look at the photo album. This was taken in May of 2010. Oh my god, look at them! My babies, little baby Marcel, a little Teddy Ursa and Flaffy. Who's Lubrion? I guess it wasn't always named Luxor. I do not remember this. Maybe I eventually like changed it. Yeah, look. Ooh. I don't know why I named it this. I guess I later went back and renamed them, which I did not remember. But that's interesting. Oh, his name was Ontario originally. Okay. Maybe I was always naming stuff after cities. Apparently. There's Marcel though. So Marcel was traded in. The rest were either eggs hatched in this game, so they had my OT. But Marcel's name I could not change, so Marcel's name was just Marcel. Look at my guys growing up, and Marcel stayed a Mime Jr. until I caught Ho-Oh. I dragged that baby through that whole game. So now, okay, now it says Sahara, so this was after I had renamed them. I love that it saves the date. I moved in June of 2010 to Las Vegas, so this is still California at this point. So I think I mentioned earlier in the video that I would explain why I like Mr. Mime. This is it. This is why. It's because I did this random team and didn't pick Mr. Mime myself. The random numbers were picked for me. That was one of the benefits of doing randomized teams, was I was using Pokemon that I maybe wouldn't have picked otherwise. I just got so attached to that Mime Jr. and this Mr. Mime and this team and these guys, and I love all of them. Dragging that little Mime Jr. through the whole game just really endeared it to me. And so I love Mr. Mime from that point on, and that's why I chose it deliberately this time. When I went back, I still was in California at this point. That's so crazy that I played this much before I moved, because I remember a lot of this being after I moved. At the time, I was moving to the same city as the internet boy I was dating, and we played this game a lot together. And actually, it was very cute. We both had Ampharos on our team, and mine was male, and theirs was female. And so we gave them both destiny knots and had them get into a fight where they would just like be eternally attracted to each other and not be able to hit. And I still actually, I think I have that Ampharos still too, the other one. But this would have been like the month I moved to Vegas this month. And there's that Celebi from the Celebi event. This is the last Pokemon I needed to complete my Pokedex. I was so excited about this event. Oh my gosh. It's a trip down memory lane. I love that this photo feature is here. So that's kind of it for Gen 4. I have the team that I'm currently using for my current Soul Silver playthrough. So I'll just quickly introduce you to my Pokemon from my current playthrough. Well, I guess I have one shiny leaf on my Virgo. This team is based off of Erica's team from Stadium 2, her round 1 team in the Gym Leader Castle, except I made a few substitutions. So instead of, I don't actually have it with me. I don't normally have Poliwhirl on this team. Instead of Venusaur, I have Meganium again. And instead of Tangela, I have a Heracross. Normally, Jupiter the Meganium is on this team. And there's Virgo. This game is really hard if you have mostly grass Pokemon. So Europa, the Moon of Jupiter, Aquarius. The cool thing about this Eevee is that I reset exactly once to get a modest Eevee, and it happened to be female. Like, I was planning to bunker down and like reset until I got one that was a good nature for Vaporeon, because I wanted a Vaporeon to be like Erica's team. I just got it right away, and it was female. And I was like, oh my god, it's meant to be. This is also the strongest Pokemon on my team by far, so very good Pokemon. And then the moveset for this Blissey has been such a pain to do. I had to play so much Voltorb Flip for Ice Beam. This moveset is identical to Erica's Blissey, so I had to play so much Voltorb Flip for Ice Beam. I had to walk 10,000 steps on my Pokewalker and then grind for a Psychic TM to have one this early in the game. Evolved it too late into a Blissey because I couldn't get online to get an Oval Stone until my router got here. Gen 4 Wi-Fi, you have to get online the old-fashioned way. I missed the window to get soft-boiled, so I had to get a heart scale. I should plug my Discord. Right now, my entire Discord is playing this game. It's playing Heart Gold and Soul Silver all together, and we have a channel just to talk about the game in as we're playing it. I like call it a book club game playthrough. Like we're just like playing it all at the same time. And it is so great because I have a nice little built-in focus group of people who are all playing it at the same time. And we're like discussing what we like and don't like about it. Pre-writing my script in my head for the review. So it's very fun. I'm probably going to do that again. The Discord is for patrons and Twitch subs. So it's another perk of joining my Patreon is you can hang out with me and geek out about stuff like this and have people to play with. Like, we all got online together and traded Pokemon, and I gave everybody Pokerus because I have Pokerus in Gen 4. Gen 5, Vidit actually got me Pokemon White. This was my team. And as you can see, we have these lovely animated GIFs now. Enjoy them while they last. My randomly generated team strategy kind of fell apart here because, as you already know, infamously Gen 5 has limitations on what is in the regional decks. It's not as strict, obviously, as other games that are like this. So you can trade in Pokemon, which is what I did. But I think I wanted to get a Slowbro or something for the 5th Pokemon, and I don't even remember what the 6th Pokemon was, and obviously that's not in Unova. I got these 4 and no more. So I literally just had a team of 4 Pokemon because I couldn't have the other 2 that I wanted. I went with a mythology theme for the nicknames this time around. I guess I was really interested in Googling like the symbolism of things or the legends around things. I think this was the time that like I was starting to do like debunking urban legends on YouTube. So I guess that's kind of what made me think of it. Let me explain some of these names because they're mythology related. So I need to explain the meaning. So Iliamna, the Samurott, is named after Iliamna Lake, which is a lake southwest Alaska, according to the internet. And the name of the lake was named by a Russian explorer. And the lake is named after a great sea monster that this explorer claimed was living in it. Pelopidas, the Escavalier. Pelopidas was a Theban statesman and general in Greece, like in ancient Greece. He was an athlete and a warrior, and I guess that was like all I went by. It's not like snail related whatsoever. It was like just warrior mythology. Chandra, the Umbreon, is named after the Hindu god of the moon. I must have had someone else give this nickname to this Umbreon because the original trainer is Garrett. So somebody traded me this Umbreon. I didn't catch this in the game. And then Dahlia is the Lilligant. And Dahlia, an Aztec goddess, but it's also the name of a plant. It's the name of a flower, and like there's plenty of myths and legends around dahlias, so it's hard for me to like pin down exactly one I had picked for this particular Lilligant, but this is the reason I love Lilligant, was I used in this team. Love Oshawott too. And I still have them, so we'll flip over to the 3DS ones again. Chandra, there's Dahlia, Pelopidas, and there's Iliamna. So yeah, my original Gen 5 team was literally only 4 Pokemon. So this was my first White 2 team, and this one is memorable for kind of the opposite reason of most of the rest of them. So I did randomly generate the numbers for this team. I don't exactly remember where all the Pokemon came from, if I caught them in the game or what, but I do know that it made this game really difficult to use this team. These are all, for the most part, extremely slow Pokemon and not very good. And to top it off, I checked the IVs of some of these later, and this Cherrim's IVs were like 0, 9, and 11. like comically bad stats, even for a Cherim. It's a cute team, but like I could barely beat Colress. Like I had to really like spam so many items to beat Colress with this team. I think I didn't even finish the game. I think I restarted because this was so bad. And I have some of these Pokemon still, but I don't have all of them. I don't know what happened to some of them. I traded one of them to my friend Double-Edged Cat, so he has my awful, awful Cherim. I saved Chiffon, the Vanillux, the Qua, and Sachet. I don't know how you say that, but I don't know where this Mothim is, and the Stantler. This was sort of like the downfall of like using Pokemon that you would never ordinarily pick out, is that sometimes you just get all duds and you like end up regretting doing it at all. I did another run of White 2 after this because this was so unsuccessful, and I just felt like I didn't get a good experience of the game with this team. Some people really hate the idea of never using bad, like, or even calling some Pokemon bad Pokemon. In theory, skill and training should compensate for whatever the issue is. This is why you need to balance team building for the most part. And it's not all about type. It gets very difficult if like every Pokemon on the team has the same drawback, which was sort of the case here where they're all very slow. And obviously I'm not using Trick Room like in a playthrough, so I was getting murdered all the time. Any one of these Pokemon, if I was using them on a different team, I'm sure I could have a good time with them. Like if the rest of the team was better. I actually found a picture of this team, incredibly, during the playthrough. There they are. There's the infamous crew. And by this point, maybe in Gen 4 it was still like using action replay and rare candies and stuff. And by Gen 5, I was not doing that. So I was like actually playing the game as it was intended to be played. So I had started interacting with the Pokemon community online in Gen 3 for the most part. I sort of got into it kind of through YouTube. It was in Gen 5 that I sort of started to join communities based around Pokemon. That was a little difficult because I had the YouTube channel thing that was like slowly becoming my career. So it would be hard to kind of neutrally discuss Pokemon using my online handle. The idea of using, I don't know if I want to explain this. I used to go on anonymous online communities. I don't do this anymore. Now I pretty much only talk about Pokemon in my Discord and on Twitter. But what people would do on there would be people who would breed, I'm assuming for competitive, and then they would just have boxes of breeding rejects and they would give them out to people because there wasn't any Wonder Trade back then. Tried to breed in Gen 5 and it's still really hard, so these people were really dedicating a lot of time to this. And then they were finding homes for their breeding rejects. So what ended up happening was somebody had a thread for this where they were giving out mystery eggs, that they had breeding rejects from working on a competitive team, and they were just giving out these eggs that no one knew what they were. I decided I would take these and start my next White 2 playthrough with an entire team of mystery eggs. Rather than randomized Pokemon like from the random number generator, I was gonna have somebody else just give me a bunch of eggs. That's what these were. I started a new game and then I traded over. As soon as I was able to trade, I got these eggs. I hatched them, and they ended up being an entirely water team, an entirely female team. And they all had pretty good IVs and good natures. Some Egmoos, some of them, and Politoed was like a Dream World hidden ability Politoed, so it had Drizzle. The Ludicolo, I think, had Rain Dish. Let me double check, because I still have these Pokemon. Yes, it has Rain Dish. And so this was just a really good team, and a team I would never pick out ordinarily on my own. But it was so much fun to play through the game with these Pokemon, and I think some of them knew Surf from the beginning of the game. And in Gen 5, you can use HMs without any gym badges. They just totally lifted that restriction. So this meant I could explore the entire map, basically, from the beginning of the game. And I had so much fun doing this. I think I EV trained this team at the start of the game, just like my Heart Gold team. I really got invested in these Pokemon, and because they were really good Pokemon, when I got to some of these areas in the game that were like way too high level for where I was supposed to be because I was surfing early, in Castelia City, the first time you go there, in the sewers, there's kind of this hidden area where you can get back up above the sewers, and there's like a gang hiding back there, and they have these level 30 Pokemon, and they're hidden, they're secret, and if you beat them, you get a medal for your medal case. And I didn't know about them previously, so I just totally organically explored my way into finding this gang with my super overpowered but still low level Pokemon from the internet. I managed to beat them like at a severe level disadvantage, and then the game gave me a medal for it. That's a memory I'm always gonna have of White 2. It was incredible, and I loved these Pokemon from that moment on. They were one of my favorite teams that I ever raised. A perfect way, like back to back with that other team, a perfect way to experience White 2, where I really struggled with it the first time and really didn't have fun. And then the second time through, it was like one of my favorite playthroughs of any video game I've ever done in my life. And I still remember it 10 years later, probably more than 10 years later. Like I say that I was maybe 20 at this point, but if I think about it, I have the date probably on these Pokemon of when they were hatched, right? No, it just says traveled across time and space. Damn it. Oh, I still have the save file though. And my first Hall of Fame. Let's check it out. Okay, here's my first Hall of Fame clear. It was in May of 2013, so I would have been a few days away from turning 20 when I beat this game. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. This would have been the year I moved to Portland, so I would have lived in Portland for about 5 months at this point with my all-water rain team. Isn't that so cute and like serendipitous? I definitely didn't plan that. It was a mystery egg run. Yeah, very memorable team. I still love all these Pokemon. One of the reasons that Politoed is now up there in my rankings of Pokemon is one of my favorites because it was so much fun to use this Drizzle Politoed with this Swift Swim. Like this at the time was actually banned in Smogon, but it was a Drizzle Politoed with a Swift Swim Kingdra and my Rain Dish Ludicolo. It was such a great team. It was so much fun. They wrecked in the battle subway. Oh, and I was taking public transportation for the first time because I had just moved to Portland and they have like this functioning train system. So I was taking the train all the time to get around. And I was like doing the battle subway on the train. This was such a fun time in my life. And also it was awful. Also it was really hard because I just moved to a new state by myself pretty much. This team was there for me when I was on my own and like making it in the world. So we're gonna be moving more quickly through these now because beyond this point, we have already covered the most recent teams in the playthroughs that I have done for fun on my own. And then we kind of are at this point drawing a line for when this stops being purely pleasure activity for me and becomes my full-time job. The teams through Gen 6 kind of stop really meaning as much to me. I really had to kind of squeeze as much content out of Gen 6 as I possibly could. So that was very exciting, but also it sort of changed my relationship with the game a little bit. Some of these teams are not as memorable as like the ones we've already covered, but maybe it'll also be relatable to some of you to see how my team building changed from this point on. Because you've seen me do the no thoughts, head empty, random teams. You've seen me do the really intense planning teams and the aesthetically motivated teams. From here on out, it really evolved. So this is my first and possibly only real competitive team. I ended up building this originally kind of on a time crunch, and there was an on-campus food drive Pokemon tournament. I knew that I really loved using that rain team from Gen 5. So I built a Sun team. And this was before Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire had come out. I took advantage of Mega Charizard Y. This was the first iteration of it. So the weather setter was this Meowstic, and it has Prankster, Meowstic male, so it uses Sunny Day, which is kind of silly in hindsight because I have the Charizard Y. I'm trying to remember why. I think I just liked Meowstic and I wanted to use it, make it work, but it didn't really work. So this is the first iteration of this. The Charizard is one that I bred myself, and so is the Venusaur. I did not breed the Lilligant or the Florges. I think that my boyfriend was breeding those. These were leftovers that I used. Dragonite was one that I got off of Wonder Trade. Somebody Wonder Traded me this really great Dragonite. And sometimes back then, when people would Wonder Trade you things on accident, they would pop up in your PSS, or your player search system, and then they would like want to trade with you immediately after, and you'd offer them their Pokemon back, and then they'd accept and take it back. Like, oops, I didn't mean to do that. But this person Wonder Traded it away and then never contacted me for it back. So this Dragonite does not have a nickname. Was very nervous about this because I'm not a competitive person, and I don't like losing, so I mostly just don't compete. It was 6v6 this tournament, and the only things that were banned were legendaries. The very first match was against this guy who happened to use a shuckle, and I had nothing to deal with this shuckle, so I was like sweeping his entire team up until the shuckle came out, and he just walled my entire team. And it was such a frustrating way to lose that I actually started crying and left to slowly be stalled to death on your very first competitive match. And I had practiced against my boyfriend at the time, and it just didn't work out. And so I left in disgrace and did not continue on in that tournament. We did donate our canned goods to the food drive. But so then I made some changes to this team specifically to account for shuckle. I have a document. I wonder if I wrote down what my thought process was, because I actually have this really ancient document that has a list of all of the Pokemon that I've ever raised and what movesets I gave them and why I gave them the IVs that I did. This goes back all the way to Gen 5. I'm positive that there's some notes in there that I'm going to want to read. I haven't looked at it yet, so let's take a look. You'll notice a running trend with me that I have an over-reliance on Notepad over like real word processing. Let's see what I did here. Oh, I wrote down their birthdays. Look, that's so me. His birthday is October 26th. Oh my god, you guys. This is like, I'm gonna throw up. This is too cute. So this Dragonite that I got on Wonder Trade was an Adamant Multiscale Dragonite. I still have all these Pokemon, but this is kind of interesting to read instead of just looking at them. It wasn't raised, and like, look at its IVs. It's got 531s. Like, I don't know why someone Wonder Traded this. So let's see. What did I do to deal with... Well, there's no notes in here about what I did specifically. I just remember I changed this team specifically, or came up with some kind of strategy to counteract the shuckle specifically so that I wouldn't get trapped by that again. My first relationship with my boyfriend from high school, who moved with me to Portland, sadly ended. And then I was single, and I was still playing X and Y, and I had this team. And I was like ready to go, but I was never going to challenge anyone ever again. And actually, shortly after this, I did replace Meowstick with this Rotom that I got on Wonder Trade, which is also not nicknamed because I got it on Wonder Trade. I was in class playing my 3DS, and I was in the same class as my current husband, Chaz, and at the time we were not dating yet. He saw me playing Pokemon, came up to me, and he was like, oh, so, we're gonna battle later. And I was like, what? And he's like, our eyes met, didn't they? We did battle later that day. This was like one of the first conversations I ever had with him, and thank God I kicked his ass. I was so worried that I would lose with this team again after I did so much practicing and lost so bitterly, and he had a shuckle, but I was prepared. And not only did I beat him, I swept his entire team with 2 Pokemon. He was using a sand strategy, but I was ready and extremely prepared. And Sand Setter was Tyranitar, and there was something about speed where when I Mega Evolved, I replaced his sand with my sun, and he wasn't prepared for that. And he had EV trained his team, like he knew about, like he was a real player. He had done his homework, but I was so happy. I like totally destroyed him. And then we got married. And I've never rematched him again because I want that to be my memory of my extremely short competitive career. That I finally won with this team once and only once. It was also an extremely awesome way to get my attention. It was really false advertising though, because after this, Chaz completely stopped playing Pokemon and really likes Monster Hunter and gacha games instead. So I thought I had found myself one of those rare boys that likes Pokemon, but no, it was a fake gamer all along. So next, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire come out. My first time through, I was still making content. I couldn't really take my time with it. I think I recorded pretty much my entire playthrough and immediately dove into like making more top 10 lists and stuff. And so I don't remember too much about this playthrough. I remember mostly that these Pokemon were the offspring of my original Gen 3 Pokemon that I still had. So I bred them with either a Ditto or each other in some cases, and their offspring was what I used in my Omega Ruby team. Like, I just thought that was so awesome that I could not only still use my original Pokemon from Gen 3, but their children in the Gen 3 remake. So this Zubat that became this Crobat was the offspring of my 2 Crobats, Jacqueline and Carlo, which I showed you earlier, and I thought that was so adorable that I drew this picture to commemorate it. Ain't that sweet? Jacqueline and Carlo and their little baby Renee. Not much else to say about it other than that. Don't really remember the playthrough too much. Oh, the Jeremy was a contest superstar. This plus was like totally single-handedly won every single contest and made it to the master rank. And I made a video explaining how to win contests, and Jeremy was the star. Oh, and I didn't say this, but the Venusaur on my competitive team was the Bulbasaur from the shiny hunting tutorial for Gen 6. You can slowly see my world opening up, my brain being more involved in the team building process. So I had a strategy, like a competitive team that I built. I had this team, which had like a concept, that really lent itself to the game I was playing. And then, so this is really the first aesthetic team that I built. I think I was looking at like what Jigglypuff could learn, and I realized that Jigglypuff gets Nightmare as a move tutor move exclusively from XD Gale of Darkness. And it could also get Perish Song as an egg move. Just the wheels in my brain were finally turning, and I was like, okay, this is an RPG. Let's do this. Let's roleplay. Let's make this happen. I got my Perish Song, Nightmare, Jigglypuff from Gen 3 and transferred it all the way up to Gen 6. I Masuda methoded, I think, this Shuppet, the shiny Shuppet, probably an X and Y. And then I have to double check, but I think that I gave this Murkrow an egg move. So this Murkrow has a transfer move. It's not an egg move. Ominous Wind. It is a move tutor move only in Platinum and Heart Gold and Soul Silver, so I must have got it in Gen 4 and then taught it Ominous Wind and transferred it up, so that's another specific move, and then I kept it and Jigglypuff unevolved. And then I don't know if Gengar or Espeon had anything really special about them. They were just like adding to the pastel goth vibe of this team, and I had a whole secret base for them. Actually, I probably still have that base. Let me pull that up. So this is my secret base. The 301 Club. This is such an old YouTube reference, but do you recall that back when you used to upload videos, the view count would stall at 301? Yeah, so this is my secret base. As you can see, it's very pastel goth. I completely recruited a ton of these Hex Maniacs, and I have like the Jigglypuff doll representative of my Nightmare Jigglypuff, and that's one of the things that I really liked about this game is the secret base building. And the fact that I actually could do it online now and share it with people. So I don't think the QR codes work anymore now that the 3DS is offline. I had a QR code and I sent this to people, and you can see I got the gold flag for the bases. I was really into this. So you get a sense of how I've sort of like adapted my team building style into now what you see it as today. Really thought out process of, see, when was this? This was in 2015, this pastel goth team. So it's, I guess, almost, it's been like 9 years. Oh my God, it's 2024. It's been 9 years since I built my first aesthetically motivated team. Jesus Christ. Okay. So I did not play Pokemon Let's Go Eevee until really recently. Certainly not when it came out. I got it, I think, around when it came out and kind of tried to play it and really didn't click with it. And then recently, Vidit has been trying to get me to play this game because he thinks that it's like really revolutionary, and I disagree. I think I wanted to try and catch up on some of the more modern Pokemon games just so that I would know what I was talking about. I did not play Let's Go until October of 2022, which is shortly before Scarlet and Violet came out. I started playing Let's Go, and my goal with it was I want to figure out how I can have fun in modern Pokemon games. Because as you know, they really changed quite a bit about how Pokemon games expect you to team build now. So I really like making my group of 6 Pokemon and having that say something about the character and putting a lot of effort into raising them and getting those memorable experiences with them. That's not really how it works anymore, because now the raising them is supposed to take about 5 seconds, and you're just supposed to catch a ton of Pokemon and change them at any time to anything you want and have no problem whatsoever in the game. And this is popular for a number of reasons. I'm not going to say this is a bad change, Like, I understand why this change was made. It's another one of those things like when Gen 3 came out and all of a sudden I couldn't just replay the games over and over again and have no consequences for not having completed copies. This is another one of those like big changes where all of a sudden I need to play the game differently. So this was my first attempt at trying to raise lots and lots of Pokemon and still enjoy it. Now, I did not finish this playthrough because Scarlet and Violet came out. And I wouldn't say I particularly enjoyed this playthrough, but I feel like I came up with a really cute idea for it. So my idea was that if I need to pick lots and lots of Pokemon, like if I need to catch a ton of Pokemon in this game and like switch them out a lot, then maybe this is the opportune time to do something like try to roleplay a trainer class, because you can just look up like all the Pokemon that a trainer class uses in all of the games. It's all on Bulbapedia. So that's what I did. So again, in Notepad, I'm never going to outgrow this. I'm always going to use Notepad. It's you can call it like my chaotic ADHD trait that I do everything in Notepad. I was going to roleplay a junior trainer, which is sort of like the series version of a Girl Scout. I was a Girl Scout as a child. You get like rewards for catching like 100 of each species or something. So it's like, those are merit badges. Those are like patches for your little vest in Girl Scouts. So that was going to be the motivation for my trainer to catch a ton of Pokemon. So I made a list of all of the Pokemon that a junior trainer has in all of the games that were in this game. I mean, there's only 151 Pokemon in this game. And then I came up with some teams that sort of rotated them out and decided like, this one I was going to try and do the Elite Four with was like some unevolved Pokemon. And I was only allowed to evolve the Pokemon that had like an evolution in this list. So I could evolve Bulbasaur, for example, but Squirtle doesn't evolve. There is no junior trainer in the series that has a Wartortle or Blastoise. In the Battle Frontier, I also went through and made a list of like the Pokemon that junior trainers use in the Battle Frontier in Gen 3, but I kind of decided like at that point that that's just too many Pokemon, and at that point there's really nothing unique about catching any of them versus none of them. This is what I did, and then I made their names green when I caught them to sort of like cross them off without deleting them, and I guess pink means I completed the team, and then the blue meant that I was gonna take the Pokemon to the Elite Four. And I gave them all super cute nicknames, and I want to show you them. So her name is Marin, which is short for merengue. It's like an egg whip that goes on pastries. So I named all of my Pokemon after Girl Scout cookies. Isn't that adorable? So there's Samoa, Trefoil, Tagalong, Creme probably, Oxford, Do-si-do. So you can see these unevolved Pokemon that I was going to try and do the Elite Four with are like level 90. S'mores, Berry, Olay, Hoedown. Such a cute name. Echo, and then this is Thin Mint, and Yangles, and Shorty, and then Cinnamon. No, it's Savannah. Sorry, it's a Savannah Smile. And Shortbread, Royale, Double Dutch, Habana, who's in my Pokeball Plus right now, Caramel, Lemon, Cinnaspin. These are so cute. This is an adorable nickname scheme. It makes me love all these Pokemon. Granola, Strawberry, Patty, Pecan, Dulce, Leche, Daisy. Sorry, this is Cinnamon. The other one was Savannah. Lemon Drop, Raisin, Snaps, Juliet, Smiles, like the other half of Savannah Smiles, Vancho, Oatmeal, Trail Mix, the Lapras. Oh my god! And then these guys don't have nicknames. Rah, the Jinx, Chalet, and Pinata. So cute! So yeah, the tragedy is that even with all that effort to make the game fun for myself, I still did not like Let's Go. And it really was a bummer because I tried so hard to like Let's Go and I really just did not like it. So we're getting to the end here. There's only 2 more. I guess I can tell you about my Legends Arceus teams because we're starting to kind of get into the point where I'm like, okay, I'm getting how you play these modern Pokemon games a little bit more. So in Legends Arceus, I kind of just start, instead of building a specific single team of 6, I just start going for categories. Like, I just want kind of like a general vibe, and I will catch any Pokemon that sort of suits the vibe I already have going. So for example, this is kind of like the team I finished the game with. Instead, I have this picture where I've got a Heracross in there. This picture here, where this team ended up. So it wasn't set in stone. where I could only have these 6 and no other Pokemon could be swapped in or out. Instead, it was sort of more like I would constantly change who was in there. I got this shiny Stantler, kind of an impromptu added it to my team because I just happened to see it. Or I got that Alpha Blissey that's like 20 feet tall. It's huge. I think I had to go out of my way to get this Cherim because Cherim is really, really hard to get. It's fun because you actually have to like go hunt for stuff. It only shows up in specific shaking trees. So I think I traded for it because I just could, like I hunted for hours and could not get it. And I love Legends Arceus. Like it's the first modern Pokemon game in a long time that I just really clicked with. It's super fun. And I think what's fun about it is not battling at all. Like I do not like the battle system in this game. I avoid battling almost whenever possible. But what's fun about it is exploring. And so that's when it started to like sort of like be, okay, I can have fun in these new games. It just has to be totally different than how I approach older games. So the setting of Scarlet and Violet is kind of a big roadblock for me. I was not a big school person. I think I've talked quite a bit about my school experience being not very good. So I decided my character was going to be the delinquent, the school bully, maybe even, like the cutting classes, kicking over trash cans, punk rock, you know, that kind of thing. I sort of like went for Pokemon that suited that theme. And again, much like Legends Arceus, I just changed it out constantly and just added anything to my team that would suit the theme. Oh, I didn't mention, in Legends Arceus, my name scheme was like Japanese foods because of the setting. The scheme this time was like Nights into Dreams enemies, and there's actually quite a few, so I had a lot of names to go with for this. Went outside that too, just any name that kind of suited the theme and the idea I was going for. And you can see I've dressed my character in like the leather backpack and the combat boots and the fingerless gloves, very My Chemical Romance, very too cool for school. So this was fun, like just swapping Pokemon out. I would say that it's probably not as fun as Legends Arceus, like just overall. I do prefer Legends Arceus to Scarlet and Violet, but I did have a good time with Scarlet and Violet, and I ran around and I did raids with my friends. You know, it's not as fun to me as like going back and making a spreadsheet and playing an old Pokemon game. But I'm having a great time spending like 3 years playing Pokemon Crystal and 3 years playing Pokemon Emerald, and then occasionally I'll pop in and see what's going on in the main series. I had a really fun time showing you all of my old Pokemon. Thank you for listening to me talk your ear off. You saw, like, maybe it was relatable, maybe it was just like super weird and fascinating for that reason because I'm an insane person, or maybe all of us are insane. And I just have the platform to be the person who's visibly insane. Do whatever you do for fun in your free time. You know, it doesn't matter if anybody validates it, because what's really important is that life is hard and sometimes we need some joy somewhere to get through it. And so, as I've spoken about at length, my life has changed a lot, and the way I've played Pokemon has kind of changed along with it. And these were the Pokemon that were there with me through it all. So thanks for watching. Check out my Patreon if you want more videos like this. There's going to be a whole voting system where people can suggest topics for me to talk about. There's more information on Patreon, of course, about how all that breaks down and my billing schedule and things like that. I have so many essays I'm working on. I had writer's block for all of last year, and then my brain just like exploded with words after I played Baldur's Gate. I've got a lot to say about a lot of things, and some of them probably only I care about, but sometimes that's how I know it's gonna be a good video, so